My wife slept with my stepdad to steal a mansion she thought he owned. Plot twist, my dead mother left that mansion to me, and the only reason my wife didn't know that is because I lied about it years ago. One stupid lie I told sent this woman crawling into a 60-year-old stranger's bed, destroying everything she had for a house she would have gotten for free just by being a decent human being. So let me break this down for you. I'm a 38-year-old guy just trying to grieve my mother in peace. My wife is Celia, also 38, and I thought I knew her until I really got to know her. Andrew is my stepdad, early 60s, a man I barely had 2 conversations with in my life. And then there's my boy Keith, my best friend, loyal to a fault but absolutely useless when it comes to technology. Now let me take you back to the day everything started unraveling. It was a Tuesday in March when I saw them. I wasn't supposed to be on that road. My usual route to the client site was under construction, so I took the detour through Millbrook, a nothing town 40 minutes from where we lived. There was a little roadside cafe with a green awning, the kind of place truckers stop at for bad coffee and decent pie, and I glanced over because I was looking for a gas station. That's when I saw Celia. She was sitting at a window booth leaning across the table, her hand resting on top of another hand. Not just resting, her fingers were interlocked with his. And she was laughing. That full-body laugh she used to save for me back when we were dating, the one where she tilts her head back and touches her collarbone. The man across from her was Andrew, my dead mother's husband. I pulled over so fast I nearly clipped a mailbox. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I sat there for maybe 3 minutes, engine running, watching through the cafe window like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. Andrew reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Celia leaned into it. I drove away before they could see me. Now let me give you context, because without it this makes no sense. My mother married Andrew about 6 years before she passed. I never understood the relationship. Andrew was quiet, unremarkable, the kind of man who fades into the wallpaper at his own birthday party. My mother was a force of nature, a single mom who worked 2 jobs, put me through school, and somehow inherited a sprawling mansion from her uncle that she maintained with sheer willpower and duct tape. When she married Andrew, I asked her once, "Mom, why him?" She just smiled and said, "He doesn't take up too much space, baby. Sometimes that's enough." I respected it. But I never bonded with Andrew. After Mom died, we exchanged maybe 3 texts. One was him asking if I wanted a box of her old books. The other 2 were holiday obligation. So the idea that my wife was sitting in a cafe 40 minutes from home holding this man's hand, it didn't compute. When Celia got home that evening, I was sitting on the couch pretending to watch ESPN. "How was your day?" I asked. "Boring. Errands. Target. You know." She dropped her purse on the counter without looking at me. "Where'd you go for lunch? Just grab something at home?" She didn't even flinch. That's what got me. Not the lie itself, the ease of it. Like she'd been rehearsing. I let it go. Sat on it for 2 weeks. Watched her. She started taking calls in the bathroom with the faucet running. She bought new underwear, the kind she hadn't worn for me in years. And then unprompted, she brought up Andrew at dinner. "You know, we should invite Andrew for Thanksgiving. He's probably lonely. Your mom would have wanted that." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "Andrew?" "Yes. He's family, technically. We've never invited him for anything." "Exactly. That's sad, don't you think?" I looked at her across the table and something cold settled at my chest. She held my gaze with this practiced softness, this manufactured compassion, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. "Sure," I said. "Let's invite Andrew." Thanksgiving was 6 weeks away. That gave me time. I told Celia I had a work trip the week of Thanksgiving, a conference in Denver that I absolutely could not miss. She protested for about 4 seconds before saying, "That's fine, I'll handle the dinner." Andrew shouldn't be alone on the holiday. I bet he shouldn't. I bought a GPS tracker and stuck it under her car. I called Keith. "I need you to do something for me, and I need you to not ask questions." "Brother, the last time you said that, I ended up in a canoe at 3 a.m. This is worse. I need you to go to my house on Thanksgiving. Celia's going to have Andrew over. I need you to walk in unannounced and record whatever you see. Silence. Then, you think she's... I don't think. I know. I just need proof. Keith showed up on Thanksgiving with his phone. God bless that man. He's been my ride or die since 7th grade, but technology is his kryptonite. He walked into my house using the spare key, heard noises from the bedroom, pushed the door open and saw them. Naked. Together. In my bed. He hit record. On himself. 37 seconds of Keith's horrified face in selfie mode audio, of him screaming, "Oh, what? And then the sound of him running into a wall on his way out. No footage of Celia, no footage of Andrew, just Keith's left nostril and the sound of chaos. But I didn't need the video. Keith called me hyperventilating, and the tremor in his voice told me everything. Brother, I saw it. I saw everything. I'm going to need therapy. That was my confirmation. I ghosted Celia for 3 days. Didn't answer calls, didn't respond to texts. Let her marinate in the silence. Then I contacted a divorce lawyer and had papers drawn up. When I finally sat down with Celia in the lawyer's conference room, she didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She leaned back in her chair and said something that made my lawyer's pen stop moving. I did it to protect us. Andrew inherited your mother's wealth. Do you see the complexities in this family dynamics? I stared at her. Someone had to secure that mansion, and you clearly weren't going to do it. So I did what I had to do. I was feeling dizzy with her BS, so I stormed out of the meeting room. I stood in the hallway with my hands on my knees, breathing like I'd sprinted a mile. She slept with him for the house. Not lust. Not loneliness. The mansion. After I came back, my lawyer asked for the details of the conversation. I told him everything. He cracked up for a moment, but he was interested in knowing about the inheritance my mother had left. Here's where it gets complicated, and where my one stupid lie comes back to haunt everyone. My mom had left a house that she had inherited from her uncle. It was a huge mansion, way beyond my means. Interestingly, Celia always had an eye on that mansion. After our marriage, she even insisted that we move into the mansion. I was happy that Celia wanted to move in with my mother, but no, Celia wanted my mom to move out to my apartment, and we took up her mansion. I denied it. It was her house. Why should she leave? Celia said. You're the only son of your mother. That house is going to be yours eventually. That sentence lived in my head for years. When Mom died, the will was clear. The mansion went to me. But I was so disgusted by how eager Celia had always been about that property that I told her it went to Andrew. A throwaway lie. A test, maybe. I wanted to see if she'd grieve my mother or grieve the house. She grieved the house. And apparently she did a lot more than grieve. Now Celia sat across from me in that conference room, smug arms crossed, believing she had leverage. Believing Andrew was her golden ticket. She leaned forward and said the words that made me want to laugh and scream at the same time. Think carefully about this divorce. You're losing a lot more than you realize. I looked at my lawyer. My lawyer looked at me. And for the first time in months, I smiled. I signed the papers that afternoon. My lawyer kept glancing at me like he was waiting for me to hesitate, to waver, to do the thing men do when they still love the woman sitting across the table. But I didn't love the woman sitting across the table. I loved the woman I thought she was 3 years ago, and that woman had never existed. Celia signed too, but she signed like someone humoring a child. Casual. Dismissive. She even smiled at me on her way out, this pitying little curve of her lips that said, "Times you'll regret this." Asterisk. The finalization took 4 weeks. 4 weeks of Celia texting me articles about conscious uncoupling and mature co-separation, as if she were the enlightened one and I was the fool stumbling away from paradise. She never once asked me to reconsider because she loved me. Every attempt was framed around what I was times losing. Asterisk. The day the divorce was finalized, I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot and pulled out my phone. I stared at Andrew's contact for a long time. The last text between us was from 14 months ago, him asking if I wanted Mom's old books. I typed slowly. Asterisk, Andrew. I thought you should know. Celia didn't pursue you because she was attracted to you. She told me in front of my lawyer that she slept with you to secure my mother's mansion. She believed you inherited it. She was using you to get the house. I'm sorry you got caught up in this. Asterisk. I hit send. Then I added one more line. Asterisk. The mansion was never yours. Mom left it to me. Asterisk. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then nothing. For 20 minutes, nothing. Finally, times I don't understand. Asterisk. Asterisk. She thought you owned the house. She was sleeping with you to get you to sign it over to her or marry her. That was the entire play. Asterisk. No response after that. Not for 2 hours. Then a single text times. She told me you didn't care about me. She said you'd never visit. She said she was the only family I had left. Asterisk. I put the phone down and pressed my palms into my eyes until I saw white. Andrew was 62 years old. A quiet man who didn't take up too much space. And Celia had walked into his loneliness like she was filling a void when really she was just measuring the square footage. That evening, I called Celia. She picked up on the first ring. Finally coming to your senses. I told Andrew. Silence. The kind of silence that has texture, thick, suffocating alive. Told him what? Everything. What you said in the conference room? That you slept with him for the mansion? That it was a transaction? You're lying. I also told him the mansion was never his. More silence. I could hear her breathing change, quicken the way someone breathes when the floor starts tilting. What do you mean it was never his? Mom left it to me, Celia. It was always mine. I told you it went to Andrew because I wanted to see what you'd do. And you showed me. The scream that came through the phone was not a word. It was a sound, guttural, raw, the noise a person makes when they realize they've burned down their own house and they're still standing inside it. Then the words came tumbling over each other. You lied to me. I degraded myself with that. Man, do you understand what I did? I let him, for nothing you, sat there and watched me. No. You sat there and chose. Nobody made you do anything. I did it for us. You did it for a building. She hung up. I sat in the silence of my apartment and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not joy. Not satisfaction. Just the absence of weight. Like someone had been standing on my chest and finally stepped off. The aftermath was not clean. Celia showed up at my apartment the next morning at 6 a.m., mascara streaked. Still in the clothes from the night before. She pounded on the door until my neighbor threatened to call the police. When I opened it, she pushed past me and stood in my kitchen vibrating. We can fix this. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever. We're divorced, Celia. Papers don't mean... They mean exactly what they mean. She showed up at my office 2 days later, then my gym, then the coffee shop where I went every Saturday morning. Each time, the pitch changed. First, it was reconciliation. Then guilt times your mother would be ashamed of you. Asterisk. Then threats times, I'll tell everyone what kind of man lies to his own wife. Asterisk. Then back to pleading. I filed for a restraining order. Meanwhile, I transferred the mansion into my name, officially hired a contractor, and spent 3 months renovating it. New kitchen. Refinished hardwood. Fresh paint in the color my mother always wanted, but never got around to a warm sage green she'd circled in a magazine I found in her bedside drawer. I rented it to a young family. A couple with 2 kids and a golden retriever. The rent was double what my apartment cost. Every month that deposit hit my account like a quiet inheritance, my mother still providing, still taking care of me from wherever she was. Celia found out about the tenants. Of course she did. She drove to the mansion and knocked on the door, told the wife she was the owner's spouse and needed access to the property. The cleaning crew I'd hired happened to be there that day. They escorted her out. She stood on the lawn screaming at a house that was never hers, never going to be hers, a house she'd sold her dignity to claim. The restraining order was granted the following week. Last I heard, Andrew blocked her number. She moved in with her sister 2 towns over. No husband, no house, no stepdad, no scheme left to run. Sometimes I drive past the mansion on my way home from work. I slow down and look at the sage green walls, the trimmed hedges, the toys scattered on the porch. And I think about my mother, a single mom who worked 2 jobs, who held that house together with willpower and duct tape, who married a man because he didn't take up too much space. She left me everything she had. And the woman who married me for it ended up with nothing at all. Mama always did have the last word. I spent 10 years fighting for a marriage that never actually existed. Let me explain what I mean by that. I married my wife thinking we were building something real. Turns out she never loved me, married me because her mother pressured her into it, and when I finally got vulnerable enough to share my deepest secrets, she used them as a permission slip to cheat. The kicker, when I finally stopped begging and started healing, suddenly she wanted me back. I'm 32 male. My wife is Renee, 31. Her mother, Lorraine, is a devout Jehovah's Witness, who basically orchestrated our entire marriage. There's a guy I never saw coming, who I'll get to later. And then there's Mia, the woman who finally showed me what it feels like when someone actually loves you back. But I need to start from the beginning, because this thing unraveled slowly. When I was 8 years old, someone I trusted did something to me that I didn't have words for until I was 30. I carried it like a stone in my chest, this dense hot thing I could feel pressing against my ribs. Every time someone got too close, every time intimacy required me to be fully present. I never told anyone. Not my parents. Not my friends. Not Renee. Instead, I built a version of myself that looked functional. I was the guy who worked hard, who showed up, who said the right things. And when I met Renee at 21 through her family's congregation, Lorraine's congregation, I thought I'd found the person I could finally be safe with. We dated for a year. Lorraine loved me. I was a good brother, she said. Responsible. Spiritual. Marriage material. Renee and I had chemistry, sure, but looking back I realized Lorraine was the engine behind everything. She'd call Renee after our dates and ask pointed questions. She'd remind her that good witness women didn't date casually. She'd quote scripture about the virtue of marrying young. Renee was 20 when we got engaged. 21 at the altar. I thought she was happy. Her smile looked real. Her vows sounded real. The first few years felt real enough that I stopped questioning. But there was always this distance, a thin pane of glass between us that I could feel but never name. I'd reach for her hand and she'd let me hold it, but she never reached first. I'd plan date nights and she'd attend them pleasant and present, but never electric. I told myself that's just what long-term love looked like. Comfortable, Steady. I told myself I was lucky. Here's the thing I hid from her. I used adult content. Not constantly, not compulsively, but regularly enough that it became a quiet habit I maintained behind closed doors. For a Jehovah's Witness marriage, this was nuclear. I knew that. So I lied about it. Small lies, casual deflections, a browser history wiped clean like it never happened. It wasn't the content itself that mattered, it was the lying. The pattern of concealment. I built a tiny room inside our marriage where I kept my shame and I locked the door. For 10 years, that door stayed shut. Then at 30, I started therapy. The childhood abuse came spilling out like water through a cracked dam, first a trickle during session 3, then a flood by session 7. My therapist helped me understand that the adult content used, the secrecy, the inability to be fully vulnerable with Renee, it was all connected. Survival mechanisms I'd built as a kid that had calcified into adult habits. She told me healing required honesty. Total honesty. With everyone. So one night, I sat Renee down at our kitchen table and I told her everything. The abuse, the content, the lies. I was shaking so hard the table vibrated. I couldn't look at her face, so I stared at her hands instead, watched her fingers go white around her coffee mug. When I finished, the silence lasted so long, I thought she'd left the room. Then she spoke. I almost didn't marry you. My head snapped up. I was still in love with my ex, she said. The week before the wedding, I told my mom I wanted to call it off. She said I'd be disgracing Jehovah. She said I'd made a commitment, and good Christian women don't run from commitments. Renee's voice was flat. Clinical. Like she was reading someone else's story. So I walked down the aisle, and I tried. I really tried to love you the way you love me. Tried? That word landed in my stomach like a fist. Everything after that conversation moved in slow motion and double speed simultaneously. Renee said she needed space to process. I gave it to her. She enrolled in community college courses. I supported it. She started going out with classmates, bars, parties, club meetings that ran until midnight, then 1 a.m., then 2. I responded the only way I knew how. I became more helpful, more present. I cooked her favorite meals. I cleaned the apartment until it gleamed. I left notes on the bathroom mirror in her love language, words of affirmation, acts of service, every tool the marriage books recommended. I poured myself into a void and called it devotion. She stopped touching me entirely. No hugs. No kisses. She'd angle her body away on the couch like proximity to me was a chore. I'd ask if she wanted to watch a movie together, and she'd say she had studying to do, then I'd hear her laughing on the phone in the bedroom with the door closed. 3 months into this, I asked her directly, "Do you still love me?" She was standing at the kitchen counter scrolling her phone. She didn't look up. "I don't think I was ever times and times love with you," she said. "I love you as a person, but I don't think I've ever been in love with you." My knees buckled. I actually grabbed the counter to stay upright. I begged her for couples therapy. I printed out lists of counselors, highlighted the ones with sliding scale fees offered to handle all the scheduling. She said she'd think about it. A week passed. 2. I asked again. "I don't think therapy can fix what was never there," she said. I stopped sleeping. I'd lie in bed next to her, this woman I'd given a decade to, and listen to her breathe and wonder how I'd loved someone so completely who had never once felt the same way back. The glass pane I'd always sensed between us finally had a name times she was never mine. Asterisk. Then I found the messages on her phone. And everything I thought I knew about how much this could hurt turned out to be a warm-up. The messages were from a number saved under a coworker's name, but coworkers don't text each other at 1:47 a.m. about how they can still feel each other's skin. I read them standing in the bathroom with the door locked, my thumb scrolling while my vision tunneled. Explicit. Tender. the kind of intimate shorthand that only develops over weeks, maybe months. She'd been telling him things about me, about my therapy, my childhood, my issues. He'd responded with the exact right amount of performative sympathy. Asterisk, you deserve someone whole times, he'd written. She'd sent back a heart emoji. I confronted her that night. Didn't yell. Couldn't. My voice came out in this strange, airless whisper like someone had punctured my lungs. Who is he? It's not what you... Renee. Who is he? She told me. A guy from one of her college clubs. She said it had only gotten physical once. The messages said otherwise. She cried. She said she'd stop. I washed her face and tried to find the woman I'd married and couldn't locate her anywhere. She stopped for 11 days. I counted them like a man counting steps across a frozen lake listening for cracks. On day 12, I saw his name light up her phone screen while she was in the shower. She changed his contact name but used the same heart emoji next to it. When I confronted her again, she turned it on me. Maybe if you'd been more affectionate after everything came out. I told you I was times sexually abused as a child, times Renee. And I needed time to process that, and instead of giving me space, you smothered me in I. You were already talking to him before I told you anything. She went quiet. The math didn't work, and she knew it. The timeline of those messages predated my confession by at least 3 weeks. She'd started reaching for someone else while I was still rehearsing how to be honest with her. We separated under the same roof because neither of us could afford to leave. 6 months. 180-some days of passing each other in the hallway, like ghosts, occupying different dimensions of the same haunted house. She slept in the bedroom. I slept on the couch. She'd come home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine, and I'd lie there in the dark, cataloging the scent like evidence I'd never use. Darius. I never said his name out loud, but I learned it. He was in his 30s, recently divorced himself, and apparently ready to play house with someone else's wife. Renee started packing boxes. Casual at first, a few books, some clothes. Then the kitchen items she'd brought into the marriage. Then the photos off the walls, leaving pale rectangles on the paint like surgical scars. I'm getting my own place, she said. You're moving in with him. It's not a relationship. You're moving in with him, Renee. She didn't deny it a second time. During those 6 months, I came closer to not surviving than I'd been since childhood. There were nights I sat in my car in the parking garage with the engine running and no destination, just the low hum of the motor and the thought that it would be very easy to stop trying. My therapist adjusted my sessions to twice a week. She gave me a crisis number I kept in my wallet like a talisman. I used it once at 3 a.m. Sitting on the kitchen floor, unable to remember how to fill out the divorce paperwork I'd printed 6 times. The man who survived what happened at 8 years old almost didn't survive 32. But I did. Barely. Ugly. One breath at a time. Renee moved out on a Saturday. I didn't watch her load the truck. I sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks away and stared at a muffin I couldn't eat until my phone buzzed, times I left the keys on the counter. Asterisk. Over the next year, I rebuilt myself the way you rebuild a house after a flood, gutting everything down to the studs and deciding what's worth keeping. Therapy. Journaling. A gym membership I actually used. Slowly, carefully, I started to date a little and then found a great girl. Mia didn't fix me. She didn't need to. She just showed up consistently and spoke my love languages back to me like they were her native tongue. I was ultra transparent with my new girlfriend, told her everything, the abuse, the marriage, the wreckage. She held my hand through it and didn't flinch. Meanwhile, Renee dumped Darius within 3 months. Started her own therapy. Began recognizing the self-sabotage the way Lorraine's pressure had warped her into someone who made decisions out of fear and then punished everyone around her for the cage she'd built. She wanted to see me happy, but she was hurting. I had been talking about divorce for months and slowly worked on getting the papers filled out. I needed to take the final steps of filing, and I did it. I don't think Renee ever took me seriously, because now she was crying, wanting me back. Calling, texting. Showing up at my apartment with swollen eyes and apologies that sounded for the first time like they came from somewhere real. It's been so hard for me, because it actually seems remorseful, but it's too little too late. Some may think it's wrong or irrational, but I've held compassion for my ex. I know her problems and struggles, and just want to see her happy. I just couldn't get past her affair and how it hurt me so badly. When I look at her, all I see is him lurking around. I signed the papers on a Tuesday morning. Mia drove me. She waited in the car and didn't ask how it went. When I came out, just handed me a coffee and squeezed my knee. I'm rather proud of myself for being courageous enough to choose my own life. The 8-year-old boy who learned to be silent. The 21-year-old groom who mistook obligation for love. The 30-year-old man who cracked himself open hoping honesty would save his marriage. They all live in me. But they don't run me anymore. I do. My wife sent me divorce papers because I wouldn't stop taking my dying father to dialysis. I signed them without a single phone call. She expected me to beg. Instead, I felt the deepest relief of my entire life. So here's the short version. My father was dying. My wife demanded I abandon him because he'd supposedly disowned me years ago. When I refused, she divorced me and didn't even want custody of our kids. Turns out my father never actually cut me from anything, and the inheritance she called worthless was worth over $1 million. I'm 36, a father of 2, and apparently the idiot who chose a dying old man over his marriage. My ex-wife is Avril, 34, the kind of woman who sees love as a transaction. My father is Harold, late 60s, stubborn as they come. And the man Avril wanted me to leave behind. Her mother, Dolores, coached every selfish move from the sidelines. And Mr. Whitfield, my father's lawyer, well, he's the one who finally told me the truth about everything. Let me tell you how it started. Not the divorce, that was the ending. The beginning was a phone call at 2 a.m, my father's voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. They're putting me on dialysis, Harold said. No greeting. No preamble. Just that sentence hanging in the dark like a sentence of its own kind. I sat up in bed. Avril stirred beside me but didn't wake. My father and I hadn't spoken in almost 3 years, not since the fight that supposedly ended everything between us. He'd wanted me to take over his company. I'd wanted to build something on my own. He told me I was ungrateful. I told him he was controlling. He said I was no longer his son. I said fine. But when a man calls you at 2 a.m. to tell you his kidneys are failing, none of that matters. The grudge just evaporates like fog off a highway. Which hospital, I asked. Street Catherine's. Wednesdays and Saturdays. I'll be there. He hung up without saying thank you. That was Harold. But I heard it anyway in the pause before the click. I told Avril the next morning over breakfast. She was cutting a grapefruit into perfect halves the way she always did, like even fruit needed to be disciplined. Your father, she repeated. The one who disowned you. He's sick, Avril. He told you to your face that you were cut out of everything. His will, his business, his life. She set the knife down. And now you want to chauffeur him to dialysis twice a week? He's my father. He's a stranger who shares your blood. She picked the knife back up. There's nothing in it for us. That phrase, times nothing in it for us times, I should have heard it for what it was. A confession. But I was too focused on the dialysis schedule to notice. The first few weeks weren't terrible. I rearranged my work hours, my boss was decent about it, let me shift things around as long as the output stayed consistent. Every Wednesday and Saturday, I'd drive 40 minutes to Harold's house, help him into the car, sit with him through 4 hours of dialysis, drive him home, make sure he ate something, then head back to my own life. Harold didn't say much during those sessions. He'd sit in the chair with the tubes running from his arm and stare at the ceiling like he was negotiating with God. Sometimes he'd grunt a comment about the news. Once he looked at me and said, "You didn't have to come." I said, "I know." That was the closest we got to tenderness for the first month. But something was shifting. I could feel it in my chest, this loosening like a knot I'd carried for years was slowly being worked free. My father was dying, and somehow, sitting next to him in silence was healing something in me. Avril noticed the shift too. She didn't like it. It started small. A dentist appointment for the kids scheduled on Wednesday afternoon. "Oh, I forgot, that's your time's Father Day, asterisk." A dinner with Dolores booked every Saturday evening. "You'll just have to be back by 6, no excuses." When I'd come home late from Harold's, the house would be in deliberate chaos. Dishes stacked in the sink, toys scattered across every surface, laundry piled on our bed. "I can't do everything alone," Avril would say, arms crossed, standing in the wreckage she'd clearly orchestrated. Then she started on the kids. My son came to me one night, 7 years old, tugging my sleeve. "Mom says Grandpa Harold doesn't love us. Is that true?" My jaw tightened so hard I felt it in my temples. "Grandpa Harold is sick, buddy. And he loves you very much. Mom says he's mean and we shouldn't visit him." I knelt down and looked my boy in the eyes. Sometimes grown-ups say things when they're upset. "Your grandpa isn't mean, he's just stubborn. There's a difference." I confronted Avril that night. She didn't even flinch. "I'm telling them the truth. That man threw you away. Why should our children get attached to someone who... He's their time's grandfather, asterisk. He's a dying man with nothing to leave us. You're wasting time we don't have on someone who already told you you're worthless." The room went quiet. I stared at her and realized I was looking at a stranger. The ultimatum came on a Tuesday. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, Dolores on speakerphone like a war room general. "It's him or me," Avril said. "Tomorrow is Wednesday. If you walk out that door to go to that hospital, don't expect me to be here when you get back." I picked up my keys. Wednesday, I took Harold to dialysis. When I came home, Avril was gone. Half the closet empty. Her toiletries cleared out. She'd gone to Dolores' house. She needed some time to cool off, and I also needed some space from her. In her absence, I'm taking care of the house, my children, Dad, and my work. Yet I felt so relieved, so relaxed. Her absence was actually soothing to me. I'd come home and the house was times quiet, times not the tense, loaded quiet of someone punishing you with silence, but actual peace. The kids seemed lighter too. Fewer tantrums. More laughter. Then the day before yesterday, she sent me divorce papers. I was somewhat expecting it, but didn't anticipate it coming so soon. I was shocked, but deep down I was happy and relieved. I didn't call her. Just signed the papers and sent them back. Surprisingly, she didn't ask for custody of the children. That was the only clause I was worried about, but she clearly didn't want them. That told me everything I needed to know about who Avril really was. When she received the papers, she called me, yelling about how could I just sign without calling her and pleading with her. Funny, right? Her mom snatched the phone and shouted that I was a fool, throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me, and that no woman would ever tolerate a man who prioritizes a corpse over his wife. I hung up. Blocked both numbers. Then I packed up the kids and drove to Harold's house. What happened next, what my father built in those final months with my children, what Mr. Whitfield told me in that office after the funeral changed everything. But I wasn't ready for any of it, not yet. All I knew, standing on Harold's porch with a suitcase in each hand and two small faces looking up at me, was that I'd chosen right. I just didn't know how time's right. Harold opened the door before I even knocked. He looked at the suitcases, then at the kids, then at me. His mouth worked like he was chewing on something he couldn't swallow. "Spare room's got dust," he said. I'll get sheets. That was Harold's way of saying, time's welcome home. Asterisk. The first week was chaos, the good kind. Harold's house was too big for a sick man living alone, but it was exactly right for 2 kids who needed room to breathe. My daughter discovered the backyard garden overgrown and wild and appointed herself its caretaker. My son found Harold's old chess set and demanded lessons. Harold, who could barely stand for 10 minutes without gripping a counter, somehow found the energy to sit at that board for an hour every evening, teaching a 7-year-old how to protect his king. I hired a part-time caregiver, a woman named Ruth, who had the quiet competence of someone who'd shepherded many men through their final chapters. She handled the mornings so I could work. I handled the evenings. And somewhere in between, Harold became a grandfather. He'd never met the kids properly before. Avril had made sure of that. Every holiday, every birthday, there was always a reason they couldn't visit. Now there was nothing standing between them, and Harold poured into those children like a man trying to empty himself before the end. He told them stories about my mother who died when I was 12. He showed them photo albums I didn't know he'd kept. One night I walked past the living room and saw my daughter asleep on his lap, his hand resting on her head, his eyes closed, but his lips moving slightly like a prayer, or maybe just a conversation with someone I couldn't see. I stood in the hallway and pressed my palm against the wall because my knees weren't doing their job. The months folded into each other. Harold's condition didn't improve, we both knew it wouldn't, but it stabilized enough to give us time, real time. Not the frantic, guilt-soaked visits of before, but slow mornings and long afternoons. I stopped rushing. I stopped checking my phone for messages that weren't coming. I started times being there, times not just physically, but all the way. One evening after the kids were in bed, Harold and I sat on the back porch. He was wrapped in a blanket despite it being June. His hand shook when he lifted his tea. "You built something good," he said. "Your job. Your life. Without my money? I had to." "No." He set the cup down carefully. "You times chose times 2. That's different." He looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't judgment or expectation. It was respect. I was wrong to say what I said about disowning you. I was angry and proud. Bad combination. "I know, Dad. I never changed it," he said. I didn't understand. Changed what? He waved his hand vaguely. "Whitfield knows. When the time comes." I didn't press. He was tired, and I'd learned that the most important conversations with Harold happened in fragments, pieces you had to assemble later after he was gone. He died on a Thursday morning in September. Ruth found him. He looked peaceful, she said, like he'd simply decided he was finished. My daughter picked flowers from the garden and laid them on his nightstand. My son set up the chessboard on the kitchen table with the pieces in their starting positions, like Harold might come back to play. I didn't cry at the funeral. I cried 3 days later alone in his room, holding a flannel shirt that still smelled like him. Mr. Whitfield called me to his office the following week. He was a tall man with silver hair and the kind of handshake that communicated decades of loyalty. "Your father gave me specific instructions," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. "He wanted you to know he never changed the will. Not once. Not after the argument, not after the estrangement. You were always his sole heir." I stared at the documents. The house, the business, investment accounts I didn't know existed. The number at the bottom of the page had 7 figures. He told me he'd disowned me. Mr. Whitfield leaned back. "Harold told a lot of people a lot of things. But he told times me, times the truth." He paused. He said cutting you off was the worst bluff he ever made. and that you were the only person stubborn enough to call it and strong enough to walk away. He admired you for it every single day. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the desk. He also said Mr. Whitfield continued with the faintest smile that if your ex-wife comes knocking, I should remind her that the divorce was finalized a full year before the inheritance. And that voluntary surrender of custody is very difficult to reverse. I almost laughed. Harold, even dead, was still 3 moves ahead. Averill showed up 26 days later. I know because I counted. She brought Dolores. They wore black like they'd just come from a funeral they never attended. Averill's eyes were red, not from crying, from rehearsal. I made a mistake, she said at the door. I was scared and confused, and You didn't ask for custody of your children, Averill. She blinked. Recalibrated. I knew they were safe with you. I was, times selfless, times enough to... You called my dying father a corpse. Dolores stepped forward. Now listen here. She's still the mother of... She surrendered that claim in writing. Mr. Whitfield has the file. Averill's mask cracked. The tears dried up like they'd been turned off at a faucet. I'm entitled to half of that estate. We were married times when we were divorced. A year before. You made sure of it. She stared at me, and I saw it, the calculation behind her eyes, the spreadsheet running the columns, not adding up. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. You planned this, she whispered. No, Averill. I just loved my father. That's the part you could never account for. I closed the door. Next month, I'm taking the kids to the Bahamas. My daughter wants to see the ocean. My son wants to build a sandcastle as big as Grandpa's house. I told him we'd try. I took over Harold's company last week. Sat in his chair. Found a photo in the top drawer, me at 16 holding a trophy from a science fair he never mentioned attending. He was in the background of the shot, barely visible, standing behind the bleachers. Watching. Always watching. I set the photo on the desk where I could see it and got to work. My best friend asked me to plan her entire wedding. 5 events. On my dime. Then she told me I wasn't allowed to actually attend any of them because her fiancé once called me pretty. So, I'm supposed to be the architect of a wedding I'm banned from. And when I pushed back, she just kept texting me venue options like I hadn't said a word. What I uncovered that night about what she'd been saying behind my back, about the blacklist she kept, about the private trauma she'd been passing around, like party gossip, detonated not just her engagement, but friendships I'd been pouring into for years. Here's the cast. I'm mid-20s female, apparently everyone's favorite unpaid event planner and emotional punching bag. Danielle is the bride. Ryan is her fiancé who honestly deserved better from the jump. Rachel is our mutual friend with receipts, literal receipts. And Kim is my actual best friend, the one who reminded me what real friendship is supposed to feel like. Let me back up, because this didn't start with a phone call. It started with years of me saying yes. I'd been the one who organized Danielle's birthday dinner since we were 21. I booked the Airbnbs for group trips. I made the spreadsheets, collected the Venmo payments, handled the deposits when someone inevitably ghosted on their share. When Danielle's car died sophomore year, I drove her to clinicals at 5 a.m. for 3 months straight. When she and Ryan first started dating and she was spiraling with anxiety about whether he liked her, I sat on her bathroom floor at 2 a.m. talking her off ledges. I did all of this because I thought that's what friends do. Kim does it for me. I do it for Kim. It's supposed to be a circle. With Danielle, it was a funnel. Everything poured in one direction. But I couldn't see that yet. Not clearly. I was too busy being useful. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I was meal prepping, phone wedged between my ear and shoulder, and Danielle was already mid-sentence when I picked up. She does that. Starts talking before you even say hello. Like your existence only begins when she needs something from it. So I'm thinking 5 events. Engagement party, bridal shower, bachelorette, weekend rehearsal dinner, and obviously the reception. I want a theme for each one, not like tacky themes, like times curated, times themes, and I need you to handle vendors because you're so good at that. My knife paused mid-carrot. Danielle, that's a wedding planner's job. That's literally a profession. I know, but you do it better and you actually care about me. I'll send you my Pinterest boards tonight. I should have said no right there. I should have said times hire someone, asterisk. Instead, my brain did that thing it always does, calculated the cost, weighed the friendship, and decided the labor was worth preserving the relationship. I can help coordinate, I said carefully. But I can't fund 5 events. We'd need to split. We'll figure out the money part later. Which in Danielle's language meant I'd be covering it and we'd never speak of reimbursement again. I knew this. I times knew times this. Then she said it. Casually, like she was telling me she'd switch to oat milk. Oh, and just so it's not weird, you won't actually be at any of the events. Like, not as a guest. Ryan used to have a crush on you or whatever, and I just don't want that energy on my wedding day. You get it. The carrot rolled off the cutting board and onto the floor. I watched it land. I'm sorry, what? It's not a big deal. He told me years ago he thought you were pretty and it's just been in my head. I'd rather not have that distraction. But you can still do all the planning stuff. You're literally the only person I trust with this. My chest did something strange, not a crack, more like a slow pressurization, the way a plane cabin feels before your ears pop. I stood very still in my kitchen and listened to her breathe, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. Danielle, you're asking me to plan and pay for a wedding I can't attend. I mean, when you say it like times that asterisk. How else would I say it? You're being really negative right now. I thought you'd be supportive. I told her I needed to think. She said, okay, love you, and hung up. 45 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Then again. 3 venue links. A screenshot of a floral arrangement. A text that said times. This one has a rooftop at IDK if the vibe is giving rehearsal or reception. Thoughts. Asterisks. As if the conversation hadn't happened. As if I hadn't said a single word. I called Ryan at 10 p.m. He picked up on the first ring, which told me something was already wrong on his end. She told you, he said. Not a question. Ryan, what the hell is going on? Silence. Then, can you meet me and Rachel at Waffle House, the one on Federal? Rachel was already in the booth when I got there, laptop, open phone, face down on the table like a weapon she was keeping in reserve. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her before, not angry, not sad. Asterisk. Ready? Asterisk. Sit down, she said. There's more. Ryan slid into the seat across from me. He looked hollowed out. He kept turning his coffee cup in circles without drinking from it. She has a list, Rachel said. An actual list. Every woman Ryan has ever called pretty, mentioned positively, or looked at too long in Danielle's opinion. You're at the top, but there are 11 names. My stomach dropped. A times blacklist asterisk. Rachel turned her laptop toward me. Group chat screenshots. Danielle's words unmistakable. Her syntax, her emojis. Her particular way of typing LMAOO with exactly 3 O's. And there in a chat I'd never been added to was my name next to a message that made my vision narrow to a pinpoint. Asterisk. She's literally been Baker acted before, like, she's not stable enough to handle being told no. Watch her spiral. Lol asterisk. My mental health history. Passed around like party gossip. I looked up at Ryan. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Rachel reached across the table and opened another screenshot. She told him about you too, Ryan, Rachel said quietly. The thing you told her in confidence. About your stepdad. Ryan's coffee cup stopped moving. The sound he made wasn't crying exactly. It was closer to something structural giving way, a support beam finally snapping after years of invisible rot. Rachel slid her phone to the center of the table. I have everything. Every text, every chat, timestamped. She looked at me. I looked at Ryan. Ryan wiped his face with the back of his hand and said 5 words that changed everything. Put it in the group chat. I didn't warn anyone. I didn't write a preamble. I didn't craft some diplomatic message about having a difficult conversation. I just opened the group chat, the main one, 23 people, the one Danielle herself had named Ride or Dies, and I started uploading. Screenshot after screenshot. Long Samsung captures that scrolled for days. The blacklist. The Baker Act comments. The mocking. The private trauma she turned into group entertainment. Every message timestamped, every participant visible, every El Ma'o with exactly 3 O's preserved in digital amber. Rachel watched from across the Waffle House booth, her coffee untouched. Ryan stared at the table with the particular stillness of someone who'd already detonated, and was now just watching the debris settle. My phone started buzzing before the last screenshot finished uploading. The chat erupted. Not slowly, instantaneously, like a flock of birds startled off a wire. Question marks. What? Someone typing, stopping typing again? Then Danielle's name appeared at the top of the screen. Asterisk. This is so out of context. LOL asterisk. Then times. She's literally doing this because she's mad she wasn't invited, asterisk. Then, when no one responded to that times, it was a joke. Get over it. Asterisk. Ryan's phone buzzed. He looked at it, showed me the screen. Danielle, times. Baby, call me right now. She's manipulating you. You know how she is. Asterisk. He typed 4 words, times, keep the ring. We're done. Asterisk. Then he blocked her. Right there in the booth syrup sticky table between us, a waitress refilling waters 3 feet away, like the world wasn't rearranging itself. He blocked her and set his phone face down and pressed both palms against his eyes. I told her about my stepdad on our 6-month anniversary, he said, into his hands. I'd never told anyone, I thought. His voice cracked. I thought that's what you do when you love someone. Rachel put her hand on his arm. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The fallout took 12 hours. By morning, Danielle's damage control campaign was in full swing. Her angle was that I was upset I wasn't invited, and that's why I was sabotaging her and Ryan. She was telling everyone who would listen that she felt Ryan valued me above her, so that's why she initially didn't want me there, and that she'd invite me if I talked Ryan out of leaving her and let her pick my outfit. The audacity of that offer times let me dress you like a doll and you can earn your way back into my wedding times would have been funny if it weren't so clarifying. Because here's what her it's a joke, get over it mindset actually did. It revealed far more about those considered friends and associates than I'm comfortable admitting. People I'd ignored red flags from to keep mutuals. People I genuinely missed the truth about because I was too busy being useful to look up. The messages came in waves. Some people were horrified, supportive, furious on Ryan's behalf. But 4 of them, 4 out of 15 people I'd considered close, responded with variations of the same deflection. Asterisk. She's always been like that. You knew what she was. Asterisk. Asterisk. This feels like drama I don't want to be in the middle of. Asterisk. Asterisk. You're kind of blowing this up for no reason. Asterisk. And then in a separate thread I was added to, accidentally before being quickly removed, the truth I'd been circling for years. One admitted she'd only maintained the friendship because I always drove. Another said I was useful for trip planning. A third referenced the free babysitting I'd done for her son 47 times. I'd counted once during an Insomniac, 3 a.m. as though it were a service she was entitled to. The fourth said, and I quote, "She's great for double dates because she makes everyone look low maintenance by comparison." I read that last one sitting on my bathroom floor. The same bathroom floor where I'd talked Danielle through her anxiety about Ryan. The same position, the same tile cold against my legs, except this time no one was sitting with me. I called Kim. She picked up on the second ring, and the moment I heard her voice, I couldn't hold it anymore. "I feel dumb," I told her. "I feel really, really dumb." And close to tears. I cut my mother off for a lot of these same behaviors, and then I let it replicate. I let the same dynamics walk right in, wearing different faces, and I times hosted times them. Kim was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're not dumb. You're someone who was trained to tolerate this. There's a difference." Rachel wanted to go nuclear. She had Danielle's nursing program director's email pulled up, screenshots of HIPAA-adjacent gossip Danielle had shared about patients, a draft letter that would have ended her career before it started. "Don't," I said. "She weaponized your Baker Act." "I know. And I'm not going to become someone who weaponizes back." Rachel stared at me for a long time. Then she closed the laptop. I blocked Danielle that afternoon. Then the 4. 5 contacts removed in under a minute. Years of one-directional friendship erased with 5 thumb movements. Ryan texted me that night, "Times I think I picked her because she felt familiar. I think that's the worst part." Asterisk. I knew exactly what he meant. The way abuse teaches you to recognize its rhythm as love. The way you keep finding yourself in the same room with different furniture. There are people I need to cut off. Surprisingly, it's a small number. 4 of the 15 are genuinely gone. The rest are navigating their own reckonings with what they witnessed, and I'm giving them space to do that. I'm not going to send Danielle's text to her nursing school. I'm not going to write a public call out. I'm not going to do any of the things the internet would find satisfying. I'm going to sit with the quiet, aching fact that I was everyone's workhorse and almost no one's friend, and I'm going to learn slowly, imperfectly with Kim on speed dial, to stop building my worth out of what I can do for people who would never do it for me. The carrot is still on my kitchen floor. I haven't picked it up yet. I'm not sure why that detail matters, but it does. My dad sent me to therapy when I was 12. Not because I was lighting fires or torturing squirrels, but because I wasn't adjusting. That was his word for it. Adjusting. Adjusting to the fact that my mom was dead and he had a new wife, Linda, and 2 new kids that weren't my mom's. Adjusting to a life that felt like a cheap knockoff of my old one. "Dr. Sharma's going to help you, Owen," he'd said, his hand heavy on my shoulder in the waiting room. "We just want our happy boy back." He didn't want times me times back. He wanted a version of me that would fit neatly into the family photo he was trying to stage. Dr. Sharma was different. She had kind eyes and didn't push. In our second session, she slid a black, hardcover notebook across the table. "This is for you," she said. A place for the feelings you can't say out loud. The big, ugly, messy ones. No one ever has to see it but you. It's a pressure valve. Use it. So I did. I filled that journal with everything. It was a sewer of unfiltered 12-year-old grief and rage. Asterisk. I miss Mom so much it feels like my bones are breaking. Asterisk. Asterisk. Linda tried to make Mom's casserole tonight. It tasted like sadness. I wish she'd just stop trying to replace her. Asterisk. Asterisk. Ben and Chloe are so loud. They're always screaming or crying or needing something. Dad looks at them like they're miracles. He used to look at me that way. Asterisk. Asterisk. I wish it was just me and Dad again. Before all of this. I wish they'd all just go away. Asterisk. For 5 years, that journal was my silent accomplice. It absorbed every toxic thought, every unfair accusation, every selfish wish my grieving brain could cook up. It was ugly, but it was honest. And it was private. Then, a few weeks after my 17th birthday, I was cleaning out my closet and found it wedged behind a stack of old yearbooks. I blew the dust off and flipped through the pages. The handwriting was a childish scrawl, the feelings so raw they were almost foreign. I didn't recognize the kid who wrote those things. Not really. I'd said my piece. I'd done the work. I was better. Holding it felt like holding onto the ghost of a person I didn't want to be anymore. So I did the most liberating thing I could think of. I walked over to the trash can in my room, dropped the journal inside, and covered it with a pile of old magazines. A burial. It was over. The next day, I took my trash down to the kitchen to dump it in the big bin, the one that gets rolled out to the curb. It was a Tuesday. Trash day. That should have been the end of it. A week later, the air in the house changed. It started with Linda. The way she looked at me, her smile usually plastered on so tight I thought it might crack, her face was gone. Now, when she passed me the salt at dinner, her fingers flinched away if they brushed mine. Her eyes would skim over me full of a kind of clinical disgust, like she'd just found a roach in the silverware drawer. Then my dad started. He'd watch me from his armchair while I did my homework at the kitchen table. Not saying anything. Just watching his jaw set a muscle twitching in his cheek. The silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. It was heavy and sharp, and it made the hair on my arms stand up. He was judging me for a crime I didn't know I'd committed. I thought maybe I'd failed a test or they'd found a vape pen in my jacket. Normal teenage stuff. I kept my head down, figuring it would blow over. It didn't. I came home from school on a Thursday. The house was dead quiet. Usually when I got home, Ben and Chloe would be running around the living room, a tornado of cartoons and goldfish crackers. Ben was 10, now Chloe 8. They were the constant background noise of my life. But today there was nothing. Just a thick, humming silence. That felt wrong. "Hello," I called out, dropping my backpack by the door. No answer. I walked toward the living room. The silence got louder somehow. I rounded the corner and froze in the doorway. They were there. On the floor. Chloe was curled into a little ball, her shoulders shaking with silent, heaving sobs. Ben was sitting ramrod straight beside her, his arms wrapped around his knees. His face, usually open and goofy, was a tight, pale mask of absolute hatred. It was an adult's expression on a child's face, and it was aimed directly at me. And there on the floor between them, splayed open like a victim in a crime scene photo, was the black journal. My journal. The one I had thrown in the trash. My blood turned to ice water. The room tilted. It was open to a page near the middle. I couldn't make out the words from the doorway, but I didn't need to. I knew every ugly sentence I'd ever written in there. I knew the kind of poison a grieving 12-year-old could spill onto a page. I took a step into the room, my throat closing up. "What's going on?" My voice was a useless croak. Ben's head snapped up. His eyes were red-rimmed, but his glare was bone-dry and full of razor blades. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He said it in a low, trembling voice that cut me deeper than any shout ever could. You wrote that you wished we were never born. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. My gaze flicked from Ben's hateful face to Chloe's shuddering back then to the open journal. My journal. My gut twisted into a cold, hard knot. Where did you get that? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. We found it, Ben spat, his little jaw set with a man's fury. I knew he was lying. Kids like that don't go digging through the main house trash bin. This was a setup, an execution. Right on cue, footsteps patted on the hardwood behind me. I didn't have to turn around. I could feel the self-righteous heat radiating off of them. Owen, my dad said. It wasn't a question, it was a verdict. I finally turned. He and Linda stood in the archway, a united front of parental disappointment. Linda's arms were crossed, her face a mask of wounded martyrdom. My dad held my gaze his own, filled with a hard, unfamiliar anger. You took it out of the trash, I said, the accusation flat and dead. You went through my garbage. Don't you dare try to turn this around on me, he shot back, his voice rising. He took a step into the room, pointing a trembling finger at the journal. We're not talking about trash. We're talking about this. This. Filth. That was my Times Therapy journal times. I choked out the words, feeling pathetic and weak, even as I said them. Dr. Sharma gave it to me. It was private. It was for getting things out so I didn't have to feel them anymore. It wasn't for you. It wasn't for any times of you. Linda let out a sound like a punctured tire. Oh, Owen. How can you say that, asterisk? I wish she'd just stop trying to replace her. Asterisk, I read that. I was trying to make you feel at home. I loved you like you were my own son. You were 12 when you wrote some of this, my dad continued, speaking over her as if she wasn't even there, his eyes locked on mine. He was the prosecutor. But you were 16 writing the rest. You weren't a baby. Asterisk. Dad looks at them like they're miracles. He used to look at me that way. Asterisk. Do you have any idea how that feels to read Owen? To know my own son resents his brother and sister for just being alive? He was weaponizing every raw, unprocessed thought, twisting the pain of a grieving kid into a deliberate, malicious attack. That's not what I meant, I yelled, my voice cracking. I was hurting. Mom was gone. My entire life fell apart, and you just wanted me to smile for a new family photo. That journal was the only place I could be angry about it. So you were acting, he roared, taking another step closer. Ben and Chloe flinched. I paid for 5 years of therapy. I listened to Dr. Sharma tell me to be patient, to give you space. Also, you could do what? Act the part of a decent son while you were secretly writing that you wished we'd all just go away. You left it for them to find, I said, my voice dropping again, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. The quiet of the house, the kids on the floor, the open book. It was all theater. You dug it out of the trash, you and Linda read it, and then you left it on the living room floor for them to find. You did that on purpose. My dad's face went white. I had him. For a split second, a flicker of guilt crossed his eyes. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by an even harder righteousness. They needed to know, he said, his voice low and venomous. They needed to know who they were really living with. That was it. That was the moment my love for him died. It just stopped. The connection, the sense of obligation, the memory of the man who taught me to ride a bike, it all just evaporated, leaving a cold, empty space in my chest. He wasn't my father anymore. He was just their protector. And I was the threat he was protecting them from. I looked from his face to Linda's, then to the two kids on the floor who were now staring at me like I was a monster from a storybook. He'd won. He'd successfully painted me as the villain in our broken little fairy tale. I didn't say another word. I turned, walked past them without looking, and went up the stairs to my room. I closed the door, but I didn't lock it. There was no point. Privacy was an illusion in this house. I sat on my bed for a long time, listening to their murmurs downstairs. The sounds of him and Linda comforting Ben and Chloe. The sound of my family reforming in my absence, bonding over my betrayal. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my dad. Asterisk, we will talk about this tomorrow. Your attitude needs to change. Asterisk. I laughed. A hollow, empty sound. He still thought he had a son he could lecture. He had no idea he'd just orphaned himself. The rage came then. It was a cold, clean rage. Not the messy, grieving kind I'd poured into that journal. This was adult. It was focused. He had taken my past and used it to destroy my present. He had violated my trust in the most intimate way possible. He wanted a perfect family photo. I'd give him one. I waited until I heard his heavy footsteps go up to the master bedroom, until the house fell into a deep, settled quiet. Then I moved. I slipped out of my room and went to the hall closet. On the top shelf behind a stack of old towels was a shoebox. My mom's shoebox. It was full of photos that didn't fit the new narrative. Photos of the three of us at the beach, my dad holding me on his shoulders. A Christmas picture of my mom in a goofy reindeer sweater kissing my cheek. Our real life, the one he'd buried. I took the box and went downstairs. The living room was a museum of their new life. On the mantel, a professional portrait, Dad, Linda, Ben, Chloe, all smiling in matching blue sweaters. On the end tables, framed snapshots from Disney World from Ben's first soccer game. My revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be an erasure. Methodically, I began to work. I pulled the smiling portrait from its frame. I slid it into my back pocket and replaced it with a photo of my mom smiling radiantly holding a 6-year-old me at a birthday party. I moved to the end tables. The Disney photo came out. In went one of me and Dad years ago, grinning with a string of fish we'd caught at the lake. The soccer photo came out. In went one of just my mom looking young and beautiful the way he never seemed to remember her anymore. I went through the entire downstairs. Every single picture of Linda, Ben, or Chloe that was on display I removed. I replaced each one with a ghost from the shoebox. I turned his carefully curated shrine to his new life into a memorial of the one he threw away. When I was done, the room felt different. It felt honest. It was haunted, and it was true. I took the stack of photos I'd removed the evidence of his new family, and I laid them neatly on the kitchen counter right next to my house key. On top, I placed the black journal. Open to the very first page where Dr. Sharma had written in her elegant script, Times. For Owen's eyes only. Asterisk. Then I grabbed the backpack I'd already packed, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. I knew what he would find in the morning. He would see a house full of the woman he'd promised to never forget and the son he had just lost forever. He wanted to weaponize my past. Fine. I would leave him to be haunted by his. When my sister Betsy called and asked me to be her bridesmaid, I didn't hesitate. Yes, of course, yes, I practically shouted into the phone, my voice echoing in my small apartment. It was a chance to do it right this time. Her first wedding, 15 years ago, was a blur I experienced through spotty satellite calls and a handful of blurry photos. I was on a 9-month deployment halfway across the world, sweating in a uniform while she was gliding down an aisle in silk. The guilt of missing it had settled deep in my bones, a permanent ache. This time, I was going to be the best damn bridesmaid she'd ever seen. Betsy was ecstatic. Oh, Liz, I knew I could count on you. It's going to be so much fun. Just a simple local thing. classy but low-key. Mark and I just want to celebrate with our real friends and family this time. Simple and local sounded perfect. At 43, my tolerance for drama was at an all-time low, and my bank account wasn't exactly overflowing. I hung up the phone, buzzing with excitement, already picturing myself zipping up her dress and holding her bouquet. The first crack in the simple facade appeared a week later in the new Betsy's Bridal Brigade group chat. A picture popped up of 4 of us photoshopped into slinky satin dresses, the color of a faded rose. They were beautiful, I'll admit. Then came the link. Asterisk, maid of honor, Sarah Times. Wow, gorgeous Bets. Asterisk. Bridesmaid Chloe Times. Love it. My finger hovered over the link before I tapped it. The webpage loaded. My eyes scanned past the elegant model and landed on the price. 500 of a Mogtiv. I blinked, then did the math. With the mandatory matching shoes, $75 and alterations, I was looking at over $500. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on a simple thumbs up emoji. My phone buzzed with a private message from Sarah. Asterisk. A little steep right? Asterisk. I typed back instantly. Asterisk, a little. That's half my monthly grocery budget. Asterisk. Asterisk. Just the beginning, I'm afraid, Times, she replied. Asterisk. Just smile and swipe the credit card. Asterisk. Sarah was Betsy's oldest friend. She knew the terrain. I took her advice, closed the chat, and tried to forget about it. It was a one-time cost, I told myself. It's for Betsy. 2 weeks later, an email landed in my inbox with the subject line, Vegas Baby Bachelorette Bash. My heart sank. Las Vegas wasn't just a different state for me. I'm in Canada. This was an international trip. The email was a meticulously planned 4-day itinerary involving a penthouse suite VIP bottle service at 3 different clubs, a Magic Mike live show, and a mandatory all-white with a splash of neon dress code for Friday night. The estimated cost per person, not including flights or food, was $1,200. The group chat exploded. Asterisk Chloe Times. Oh my God. This is amazing. Asterisk Bridesmaid Maria Times. Can't wait. I stared at my screen, feeling a cold dread creep up my spine. I did a quick search for flights. Another $600. Plus the exchange rate. Plus food. Plus the outfits. I was looking at a $2 $500 weekend. I called Betsy. Hey, Bets. Got the bachelorette email. It looks incredible. Right? It's going to be epic, she chirped. It is. It's just a little more than I was expecting. Vegas is a big trip. There was a pause on the other end. Her voice when it came back was a few degrees cooler. Liz, this is my bachelorette party. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You had one for your first... The words were out before I could stop them. I immediately regretted it. That was a potluck and a bar crawl in her hometown, she snapped. This is different. Mark and I are in a better place financially. We want to do things right. Asterisk, you are Times I thought. Asterisk, I'm not. Asterisk. But I couldn't say it. I didn't want to be Times that Times person, the one who ruins the fun. Okay, I said, my voice small. Yeah, okay. It'll be great. I hung up and transferred money from my savings account, the one I'd been carefully building for a down payment. So much for that. The hits kept coming. There was the engagement party for which we were all expected to chip in for the catering. Then came the bridal shower hosted by her fiancé's mother, where the invitation included a link to a wishing well for cash gifts. My calendar was filling up with expensive mandatory fun. Then came the registry. The email read, "Your presence is the only present we need, but if you insist on spoiling us, we've put together a small list of items to help us start our new life." I clicked the link. Small was not the word I would have used. The page was a sea of designer kitchenware, high-tech gadgets, and luxury home goods. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. A silver-plated picture frame for $250. A set of 6 wine glasses for $400. A robotic vacuum for $900. I sorted the list by price low to high just to see what the entry point was. The cheapest item was a single artisanal French cheese knife. It cost $165. I laughed. It was a hollow, empty sound. This wasn't a wedding. It was a shakedown. A beautifully curated pastel-themed shakedown. I started hearing murmurs from the other side. Mark's groomsmen were complaining too. His brother, the best man, apparently had a huge fight with him about the cost of the bachelor party, a golf weekend at Pebble Beach. Even my aunt called me, whispering, "Did you see this registry, Elizabeth? $165 for a cheese knife? Does it cut the cheese by itself?" The stress was mounting. The wedding was still 4 months away, and I was already thousands of dollars in the hole. I felt trapped. Every time I thought about backing out, the image of those blurry photos from her first wedding flashed in my mind. I couldn't miss this one. I couldn't let her down again. Last night, I was sitting on my couch staring at my credit card statement when my phone chimed with an email notification from Betsy. The subject line was, in all caps, surrounded by star emojis. Asterisk. Asterisk. Big news and a very important update. Asterisk. I braced myself. What now? A mandatory pre-wedding spa day. A destination dress fitting. I took a deep breath and opened the email. My eyes scanned the first few lines of bubbly, exclamation point-filled text about love and new beginnings. Then I saw the sentence that made the air leave my lungs. After a lot of thought and a truly incredible offer, we just couldn't refuse. We've decided to move our celebration. Forget the local country club. We're going to the Caribbean. My phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. I didn't even flinch. I just stared at the wall, my heart hammering a frantic, furious rhythm against my ribs. The Caribbean. A second destination event. She had to be joking. I snatched the phone back up my thumb, jabbing at her contact name. It rang twice before she answered, her voice syrupy with manufactured excitement. "Liz, did you see? Can you believe it?" "Betsy, what the hell is this?" The syrup vanished. "Excuse me, it's our wedding. We're excited and we wanted to share the news." "The news. You just added another $2,000 to everyone's bill, at least. We all agreed to a local wedding, Betsy. That was the plan." "Plans change, Liz," she said, her voice tight and defensive. "Mark got a fantastic deal through his company. It's a gorgeous, all-inclusive resort. It's practically a vacation for everyone. A vacation we didn't ask for and can't afford." My own voice was rising, a tremor of pure rage running through it. "The $500 dress, the Vegas trip, the registry where the cheapest thing is a cheese knife. And now this. Do you have any idea what you're asking of people?" "I'm asking them to celebrate my marriage," she shot back. "I'm sorry if my happiness is in times inconvenience times for you." "Your happiness is costing me my down payment on a house." The words exploded out of me raw and unfiltered. "I'm thousands of dollars in debt for your simple local wedding. I can't do this, Bets. Nobody can." There was a brittle silence on the line. I could hear her breathing sharp and shallow. When she finally spoke, her voice was laced with a cold, dismissive pity that was worse than the yelling. "You just don't get it, do you?" she said softly. "You've never been married. You don't understand what it takes to plan a truly special day, what it means. This is my one day to feel like a princess, and you're trying to ruin it by complaining about money." The air went out of my lungs. It was such a low blow, so perfectly crafted to wound me, that I couldn't even form a response. My single status, the quiet life I'd built for myself after years in the service, was now a weapon she was using to paint me as ignorant and bitter. This has nothing to do with me being married or not. I finally managed my voice dangerously quiet. This is about you treating your friends and family like human ATMs. If you can't afford it, Liz, maybe you should just say so, she snapped. Maybe you shouldn't be a bridesmaid after all. The threat hung in the air between us, ugly and absolute. Click. She hung up. I stood in the middle of my living room, phone in hand, shaking. My screen lit up. A private message from Sarah. Asterisk. She hung up on you too, didn't she? Asterisk. Another one from a number I didn't recognize. Asterisk. Hey, this has been Mark's best man. He gave me your number. Are we all getting financially fleeced? Or am I crazy? The guys are about to stage a mutiny over this Caribbean bullshit. Asterisk. The relief that washed over me was so intense my knees felt weak. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the bitter, unmarried sister trying to ruin everything. I was just one of the many people being bled dry by the bride and groom. The Betsy's Bridal Brigade group chat remained ominously silent for a full day. Then a new message from Betsy appeared. It was a screenshot of flight deals to Street Lucia, followed by a link to the resort's booking page. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the insane cost increase. Just a chipper message times. Let's get these rooms booked, ladies. Only 12 weeks to go. Can't wait to have my best girls by my side times, followed by a string of heart emojis. It was a power move. A dare. She was calling our bluff, knowing how hard it would be for any of us to detonate a friendship or a family relationship over this. Maria and Chloe replied with enthusiastic gifs. Sarah sent a non-committal. Looks beautiful. I stared at the message, the unspoken ultimatum, clear, get on board or get out. The image of those blurry photos from her first wedding swam in my head. The ghost of my past failure. If I backed out now, I'd be the villain of the story for the rest of our lives. The jealous sister who couldn't handle her happiness. The one who made it all about money. But if I stayed in, I'd be rewarding her. I'd be validating this monstrous entitled behavior and bankrupting myself in the process. I felt trapped, backed into a corner she had expertly constructed. For 2 days, I didn't reply. I let the silence hang there, my own little protest. On the third day, I made my decision. I wasn't going to let her win, but I wasn't going to let her push me out either. I was going to finish this on my own terms. I booked the cheapest flight I could find, one with 2 layovers, and a middle seat at the back of the plane. I RSVP'd yes to the resort. I posted a single sterile thumbs up emoji in the group chat. Then, I opened a new tab on my browser and navigated to a registry. The page loaded a monument to her greed. The $900 vacuum, the $400 wine glasses, the endless parade of overpriced homewares. I sorted the list by price low to high. There it was at the very top. The cheapest item. The entry fee to her new life. The artisanal French cheese knife. $165. I looked at the absurdly ornate silver handle, the ridiculous curve of the blade. A tool for a life I couldn't fathom, bought with money I didn't have for a sister I no longer recognized. It was the perfect symbol for the whole charade. A shakedown disguised as a celebration. A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy one. It was the smile of a soldier who has chosen her weapon. I added it to my cart. I typed in my credit card number. The number's already seared into my brain from the dress and the Vegas trip. For the gift message, I kept it simple. Congratulations. Can't wait to celebrate with you. I clicked purchase. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of control. She would get her bridesmaid. She would get her Caribbean wedding. And she would get her goddamn cheese knife. And when she opened it, I truly hoped, she would understand exactly what it meant. The text from my brother Kevin lit up my phone screen. Hey Stell, Sarah and I have huge news. Can we swing by the new place in an hour? My heart did a little flip. Huge news could only mean one thing. A baby. Finally. I texted back an enthusiastic yes and tossed my phone onto the granite countertop, a huge goofy grin plastered on my face. I looked around my house times my times house and the grin widened. After a decade of cramming my life into shoebox apartments and saving every last cent, I'd done it. I'd bought a 3-bedroom Craftsman with a wraparound porch and a backyard big enough for a dog. The air still smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Sunlight streamed through the big bay window in the living room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was perfect. And now I get to fill one of the spare rooms with toys for my future niece or nephew. An hour later, Kevin's car pulled into my driveway. He and Sarah got out, her hand resting protectively over her small, barely there bump. I met them on the porch, pulling them both into a huge hug. I knew it, I squealed. Congratulations. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Kevin said, but he was beaming. First, the grand tour. We've only seen the pictures. I led them through the house, my chest swelling with pride. They gushed over everything, the refinished hardwood floors, the subway tile in the kitchen, the spacious master bedroom. Wow, Stella. You really did it, Sarah said, running a hand along the banister as we headed back downstairs. It's incredible. It's even bigger than it looks in the photos. Kevin added his eyes, scanning the open plan living and dining area. Lots of room. Plenty, I agreed. Okay, spill. I want all the details. When are you due? Do you know what you're having? We settled on the new sofa I'd spent a month agonizing over. Kevin leaned forward, his happy-go-lucky expression shifting into something more serious. Okay, so that's kind of what we need to talk about, he began. The baby is due in March, and with our lease up in February, we need a bigger place, a family home. Oh, that's perfect timing, I said. We can start looking for you guys right away. I saw a few cute places over in the Northwood area when I was searching. Kevin and Sarah exchanged a look. It was a quick practice glance that made a knot of unease form in my stomach. We won't have to look, Kevin said slowly, his gaze sweeping around my living room again. Because we've already found the perfect house. I waited. He just stared at me, a weirdly expectant look on his face. Okay, I prompted. Where is it? You're sitting in it, Sarah said, softly placing a hand on Kevin's arm. I laughed. A short, sharp bark of disbelief. Very funny. Seriously, guys. Neither of them cracked a smile. The silence stretched thick and suffocating. The sunlight suddenly felt harsh, exposing the absurdity of the moment. You're not joking, I whispered. Of course not, Kevin said, his tone shifting from serious to matter of fact, as if he were explaining a simple math problem. Look, it makes perfect sense. Mom and I were talking about it last week. She was going to give me the money she'd saved for my down payment, but this is just cleaner. You sign the house over to me and Sarah and we're all good. My brain felt like it was short-circuiting. I was trying to connect the words he was saying, but they simply wouldn't fit together in any logical way. Sign. The house over to you, Kevin. I just bought this house. I closed 2 weeks ago. My name is on the deed. My money paid for it. I know that, he said, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. But you don't need it. You're single. What are you going to do with 3 bedrooms? This is a family home. We're starting a family. We need it. It's better for the baby, Sarah chimed in, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. All this space for him to crawl around. A yard to play in. You want what's best for your nephew, don't you? I shot to my feet, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. You cannot be serious. You can't just come into my home and demand I hand it over. That is insane. It's not a demand, Stella. It's a family decision, Kevin said, his voice rising to match mine. He stood up too, puffing out his chest. He'd always used his size to intimidate me when we were kids, and the old reflex to shrink back kicked in. I fought it. Mom and Dad already agreed. This is happening. Get out, I said, my voice trembling with rage. Don't be like this, Sarah pleaded. We're family. No, family doesn't do this. Get out of my house. Now. They left muttering about how selfish and unreasonable I was being. The second the door slammed shut, I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed my mom. She'd sort this out. She'd tell me Kevin was being ridiculous, that it was some horrible, twisted joke. She answered on the second ring. Hello, dear. Mom, I gasped, tears starting to blur my vision. You will not believe what Kevin just did. He came here and told me I have to give him my house. There was a pause on the other end of the line. It was just a second too long. Stella, let's not be dramatic, she said, her voice smooth and placating. It was the same tone she used on Kevin when he threw a tantrum as a toddler. Your brother is starting a family. He needs a stable home. You're single? You can find a condo or something? The floor dropped out from under me. What? Mom? No? I worked for this. For 10 years I worked and saved for this house. This is my time's house. And we are so proud of you for that, she said, her voice hardening. But your brother's needs come first right now. He's always been more sensitive than you. You're the strong one. You can handle this. He can't. The classic golden child defense. Kevin was sensitive. I was strong. Kevin needed help. I could handle it. It had been the narrative of our entire lives. So you're just giving my dream away, the dream you supposedly encouraged me to chase. Don't be selfish, Stella. This is what family does. We support each other. Your father agrees. We've already discussed it. Just sign the house over. Don't make this difficult. Difficult, I shrieked into the phone. You're trying to steal my house, and you're worried about me making it, times difficult asterisk. That is enough, a deep voice boomed from the phone. My dad was on the extension. You will do right by your brother. You will give him that house, or you are no longer a part of this family. Do you understand me? We will disown you. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, the silence of my perfect empty house pressing in on me. Disowned. The word echoed in the high-ceilinged rooms. For a house. Asterisk, my time's house. The rest of the day was a blur of frantic texts and calls. My aunts, my uncles, my cousins. Every single one of them had been prepped. They all delivered the same message. Don't be selfish. Think of the baby. Your family needs you to do this. It was a coordinated, suffocating assault. My phone buzzed and pinged relentlessly until I finally shut it off, collapsing onto the sofa in a state of shock. The next morning, my phone rang again. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something compelled me to answer. It was my Aunt Carol, my mom's sister. Her voice was strained thick with a mix of anger and something else I couldn't place. Stella, she said, her voice cracking. You need to get to the hospital. What? Why? What's going on? It's your father, she sobbed. He collapsed. The stress of all this fighting. His heart. The doctor said it was a major cardiac event. She took a shuddering breath before delivering the final venomous blow. My sister said to tell you that this is all your fault. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering onto the hardwood floor. My fault. The words slammed into me, sucking the air from my lungs. I sank to my knees, the smell of fresh paint suddenly cloying and suffocating. My father was in the hospital because of me. Because of a house? I don't remember driving to the hospital. All I remember is the sterile, white hallway and the way my mother's face contorted into a mask of pure hatred when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, blocking the door to his room. Kevin and Sarah stood behind her, a unified wall of accusation. "Haven't you done enough?" I want to see him," I stammered my voice, a pathetic whisper. "No," Kevin said, stepping forward. "You don't get to. You did this to him, all that stress, all that yelling. You upset him." The guilt was a physical weight crushing my chest. I almost broke. I almost said the words, "Asterisk, you can have it. Just take the house. Just let me see him. Asterisk." Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Mark, my boyfriend of 2 years. His name on the screen was like a lighthouse in a hurricane. I stumbled away from my family's venom down the hall and answered, "Stell, what's going on? Your aunt called my mom," he said, his voice a steady anchor. I choked out the story, the words tumbling over each other in a messy, tear-soaked confession. "Listen to me," he said, his tone firm but gentle. "This is not your fault. His health has been bad for years. They are doing what they have always done, using your father as a weapon to control you. Do not let them win. I'm on my way." His words cut through the fog of guilt. He was right. This was their pattern. A pattern I'd been blind to my whole life. I had posted a vague, desperate version of the story on a legal advice forum the night before, and hundreds of strangers had said the same thing. Times. This is manipulation. This is financial abuse. Do not give in. Asterisk. I hung up with Mark, took a deep breath, and walked back to my family. They looked like vultures waiting for the final surrender. I looked my mother in the eye. "I am not giving him the house," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "This is insane, and I am done." "Then you are done with us," my father's voice rasped from inside the room. He was awake. He'd heard everything. "You are dead to me." That was it. The final thread snapped. I turned and walked away without looking back. I got in my car and made 2 phone calls. The first was to a real estate agent. 5 years ago, I'd bought my parents a small, manageable condo closer to their doctors when their old house became too much. The deed was in my name. I paid the mortgage and the taxes. It was a gift. A gift I was now taking back. "I want to list it immediately," I told the agent. "As is. Price it to sell yesterday." The second call was to my company's HR department. My parents had been on my generous health insurance plan since I got the job. "I have a qualifying life event," I said, my voice cold and robotic. "I need to remove 2 dependents from my plan." The finality of it felt like setting a bone. Painful, but necessary. When Mark arrived at my house, I was sitting on the porch swing, watching the sun set on my perfect, hard-won home. He wrapped his arms around me, and I just let myself break. "They disowned me," I told him. "So I'm making it official." The fallout was nuclear. My mother received the 30-day notice to vacate and called me screaming obscenities I didn't know she knew. Kevin launched a smear campaign on social media, painting me as a greedy, heartless monster who was making her parents homeless and killing her father over some wood and drywall. Friends I'd had since kindergarten sent me texts telling me how disappointed they were in me. Then came the lawsuit. My parents, with Kevin as their mouthpiece, sued me for the value of the condo, claiming I had promised it to them as a permanent gift. It was baseless, ridiculous, and designed to bleed me dry. But I had the paperwork. Every mortgage payment from my account, every tax bill with my name on it. The judge threw it out in less than 10 minutes. Through it all, Mark was my rock. His family, who had always been kind, wrapped me in a love I'd never experienced. His mother called me every day. His father helped me change the locks on my doors. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of reading hateful comments online, Mark took my hand. "I don't want to be your boyfriend anymore," he said. My heart plummeted. "I want to be your husband. I want to build a life and a family with you that is nothing like the one you left. A family built on love, not transactions." I said yes, tears of relief and joy streaming down my face. 2 months later, the call I had been dreading and expecting finally came. It was Aunt Carol. My father had passed away. Another massive heart attack. "The funeral is on Saturday," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Your mother wanted me to make it clear that you are not welcome. She said you have your house and that's all you ever wanted." That nearly broke me. The thought of him dying, believing I didn't love him, was a unique and exquisite form of torture. I spent a week and a daze, unable to function. Mark and a therapist he found for me slowly pieced me back together. They helped me see the truth: my father's death wasn't my fault. It was the result of a lifetime of stress, yes, but also of a family system so toxic it had poisoned itself from the inside out. My refusal to be their victim anymore hadn't caused the disease, it had just changed the timeline. A month after the funeral, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but some morbid curiosity made me press the button. "Stella," she said, her voice syrupy with false grief. "I've been thinking. I'm sorry for how things turned out." I held my breath waiting. "But you have to admit," she continued, the velvet tone slipping to reveal the steel beneath, "if you had just given Kevin the house like we asked, none of this would have happened. Your father would still be alive." And there it was. Not an apology, but a final desperate twist of the knife. It was the last piece of proof I ever needed. "Goodbye, Mom," I said, and for the first time the words didn't hurt. They felt like freedom. I blocked her number. I blocked all of them. My family was gone. But as I stood in the living room of my beautiful home with my fiance's arms around me and the promise of a real family ahead, I knew I hadn't lost a thing. I had saved myself. The little blue pill didn't work. Neither did the little yellow one. For the last 2 years, my primary function as a husband had become a clinical experiment, a series of failures measured in silent, awkward moments in the dark. 27 years of marriage, and I couldn't remember the last time my wife Sarah looked at me with anything other than disappointment or pity. "I made your favorite," I said, setting a plate of chicken parmesan in front of her. Glass of wine. She didn't look up from her phone. "I'm not hungry." "You have to eat something, honey." "Don't call me honey." She finally looked at me, her eyes flat. "And I'm fine. I had a late lunch with the ladies from the charity board." Of course. The charity board. Sarah was a pillar of the community. The woman who organized the bake sales and the silent auctions. Her Facebook page was a meticulously curated gallery of her good deeds, always smiling, always surrounded by grateful people. Lately, though, her posts had changed. The pictures were different. Tighter blouses, a lower angle, a deliberate pout I hadn't seen since we were dating in college. The comment section, once a wasteland of "God bless you, Sarah," from other church ladies, was now peppered with little flame emojis from strangers. One guy in particular was relentless, Mark. Every photo, every post, he was the first to comment. Asterisk, looking incredible Sarah times on a picture of her holding a basket of muffins. Asterisk. That smile could light up a room times on a selfie in her car. "Who's this Mark guy?" I asked one night, scrolling through her feed over her shoulder. She snatched the phone away. "Just someone from an old neighborhood group." "Don't be weird, Mason." I dropped it. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the coldness in our bed was the only problem. So I tried harder. I took over the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry. I'd rub her feet while she watched her shows, hoping to coax a flicker of the old affection. Most nights, she'd just pull her feet away after a few minutes. That's enough. You're tickling me. The criticism became a daily routine. My shirt was wrinkled. I loaded the dishwasher wrong. I breathed too loudly while I slept. I felt like a ghost in my own home, a walking, talking failure she was forced to endure. Every jab was a reminder of the one thing I couldn't give her, the one problem I couldn't fix. The pressure was suffocating. It all boiled over on a Tuesday. I had come home early, bought flowers. I just wanted to talk to try and bridge the chasm that had opened between us. I found her in the living room, dressed to go out. "Where are you going?" I asked, holding the pathetic bouquet of roses. "Dinner," she said, checking her reflection in the hall mirror. "With Susan." "Oh, I thought maybe we could..." She spun around her face, a mask of fury. "You thought times what times, Mason. What did you think we were going to do? Sit here and hold hands, play a board game. What is the point of you?" The words hit me like a physical blow. The point of me, I'm your husband. A husband is supposed to be a partner. In times, all times, things she spat. You have no idea what it's like to feel desired, to feel like a woman. Do you? All you do is mope around this house reminding me of what I don't have. What times we times don't have? That's not fair, I stammered, my chest tight. It's a medical issue. We've been to doctors. I'm trying everything. Trying isn't times doing times, she yelled. I'm tired of trying. I'm 48 years old and my life is devoid of passion, of intimacy. And it is entirely your fault. She blamed me. For everything. The years of shared history, the 2 kids we raised, the home we built, it all evaporated in that moment, reduced to my one biological failing. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. The glass shattered. It was a photo from our 25th anniversary, the last time I remembered us both smiling at the same time. For the next few days, we lived in a state of Cold War. We slept in the same bed, but stayed on our respective edges of the mattress, a 6-inch space between us feeling like a mile-wide canyon. We spoke only when necessary, short, functional sentences about bills and groceries. The silence was thick with resentment. Her resentment. My shame. On Saturday night, we sat on the couch pretending to watch a movie. The tension was unbearable. Sarah was scrolling on her phone as usual, a faint, unreadable smile on her face. I was just staring at the screen, not registering a single scene. My stomach was in knots. I felt broken, completely and utterly at fault for the wreckage of my marriage. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I never would be again. She must have dozed off. Her head lolled to the side and the phone slipped from her hand, landing screen up on the cushion between us. And then it lit up. A blue and white banner flashed across the top of the screen. A Facebook Messenger notification. The name was Mark. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't look away. There under his name was the preview of the message. 2 sentences that burned themselves into my brain. Miss you. Thinking about you. The world went silent. The sound from the television, the hum of the refrigerator, my own breathing, it all just vanished. There was only the white light of the screen and the black letters that sliced right through me. My hand shaking, reached out and picked up the phone. It felt heavy like a weapon. I nudged her shoulder, not gently. Sarah. Her eyes fluttered open. What? I held the phone in front of her face. The screen was still lit up, with his name, his words. Who is Mark? She blinked sleep, giving way to a flicker of panic. What are you doing with my phone? He's just an old friend. From the neighborhood group. Old friends miss you. There are times thinking about you. Times at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, the words came out low and tight. You're twisting it, she said, snatching the phone from my hand. His wife just left him. He's lonely. I'm being a good person, Mason. Something you wouldn't understand. Show me the messages, I said. No. It's my privacy. Privacy, I laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. We've been married for 27 years. You've been crying about a lack of intimacy while you're getting late-night texts from another man. Show me the phone, Sarah. You have no right, she shrieked, jumping off the couch and clutching the phone to her chest like it was a Bible. That's when I finally broke. I have every right. I have been killing myself trying to hold this together. I cook for you. I clean for you. I rub your damn feet while you ignore me. I've seen a dozen doctors and swallowed every pill they've thrown at me, all while you stood there tapping your foot with a look of disgust on your face. And this whole time you've been doing this. The dam of her lies started to crack. It's not what you think. We just talk. About what? Things I can't talk to you about. Try me. The confession came out in pieces, each one a separate twisting knife. It started with, we've been talking for a few months. Then it became, he understands me. Under the force of my interrogation, that became, we talked about what it would be like to be together. Sexually, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She looked at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. He said things that made me feel wanted. The breath left my body. It was real. All the little signs, the selfies, the distance, it wasn't just in my head. I was living in a lie. I need some air, she said, grabbing her purse. I'm going to Susan's. I can't be here right now. She ran out the front door, slamming it behind her. I stood there in the deafening silence, the ghost of her perfume and her lies hanging in the air. My eyes fell to the coffee table. Her phone. In her panicked escape, she'd left it. My heart hammered against my ribs. I picked it up, my thumb hovering over the call log. I knew what I would find, but I had to see it. I had to be sure. I opened the log. The last outgoing call, placed less than a minute ago, wasn't to Susan. It was to Mark. The front door opened again. It was Sarah, her face pale. I forgot my... She saw the phone in my hand, saw the look on my face, and she knew. The fight that followed lasted until the sun came up. There were no more half-truths left to hide behind. Fueled by rage and the adrenaline of betrayal, I pushed and pushed until the final ugly piece of the story fell into place. You were going to sleep with him, weren't you? I finally asked as the first gray light of dawn filtered through the blinds. She slumped against the wall, utterly defeated. We made a plan, she admitted, her voice hollow. Next week. While you were on your fishing trip. My fishing trip. The one she had encouraged me to go on. Get away, she'd said. You deserve a break. I looked at this woman, this stranger I'd spent more than half my life with. There was only one question left. Is this marriage over? She just stared at me, her eyes empty. She didn't say yes. But she didn't say no. And that was the only answer I needed. The next few weeks were a blur of physical pain. A constant crushing weight sat on my chest. I couldn't eat. Sleep was a series of hour-long nightmares. The house felt huge and hostile. Every room held a memory that was now tainted, a ghost of a life that had been a fraud. I was completely, utterly alone. My pillar of the community wife had an army of friends. I had her. One night, drowning in whiskey and self-pity, I did something I'd never done before. I went on Reddit, found a forum for people who had been cheated on, and I wrote everything down. The ED, her criticism, the phone, the all-night confession. I just vomited my entire story into the void, a desperate, anonymous scream. The next morning, among the dozens of comments of support, there was a private message. It was from a woman named Anna. Her message was simple. Asterisk. I read your post. My story is almost identical, right down to the community pillar part. It feels like the end of the world right now, but I promise you it isn't. Asterisk. We started messaging. First, just trading war stories. Then talking about our days. She was a librarian, funny, and sharp and kind. For the first time in years, I was talking to someone without a filter of judgment or expectation. After a month of text, we met for coffee. I heard myself laugh. I had forgotten the sound. 3 years later, I'm standing in my kitchen chopping vegetables. It's a smaller kitchen in a smaller house, but it's mine. Anna comes up behind me and wraps her arms around my waist, resting her chin on my shoulder. Smells good, she murmurs. Need any help? I've got it under control, I say, turning my head to kiss her. It's easy. It's all so easy with her. The old problem, the one that had defined me as a failure for so long, barely registers anymore. The first time we were together, my old anxieties flared up. I started to apologize, to explain. She just put her hand on my cheek, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "Hey, look at me. There is no pressure here. You're safe with me." And just like that, the monster in my head went quiet. She didn't fix me. She just gave me a safe place to heal myself. I filed for divorce the week after Sarah's confession. It was brutal. Her affair with Mark imploded spectacularly about a month later. He had no interest in a divorced, financially dependent woman. He had just been in it for the thrill of poaching the charity queen. Our 2 adult kids, after hearing both sides, saw her manipulation for what it was and sided with me. They still speak to her, but it's strained a duty rather than a desire. Last I heard, she was renting a small apartment across town, struggling to make ends meet. Her carefully curated Facebook life crumbled. The pillar of the community was just another woman who blew up her family for a cheap thrill that didn't last. I don't hate her anymore. I don't feel anything for her at all. I blocked her number, blocked her on social media, and cut every tie. My life is full. I have my kids, I have my health, and I have a woman who loves me for who I am, not for what I can or can't do in a bedroom. I didn't get revenge. I just got better. And I've learned that living a happy life is the one kind of revenge that they can never take away from you. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, the screen lighting up with a name I still haven't managed to delete: Sarah. 4 years since the divorce, and the sight of it still ties a cold, hard knot in my gut. I let it go to voicemail. I already knew what she wanted. I was halfway to her house anyway. Another emergency. That was the term she used. Mark, her husband, her times first times husband, and now her times current times husband, had another appointment. Or a bad reaction to treatment. Or he just felt weak. The reasons were always vague, but they always ended with me getting in my car to pick up our son, Tony. Tony is 6. He's the only good thing that came out of my 2-year flashbang of a marriage to Sarah. When I met her, she was a single mom of 2, supposedly escaping a toxic marriage to a guy named Mark. I was the good guy, the stable one. I fell for her, for the kids, for the whole ready-made family thing. We had Tony, life felt real. Then one day it wasn't. She started coming home late, smelling of a cologne that wasn't mine. The usual story. The gut punch twist was who it was, Mark. The toxic ex she'd supposedly left in the dust. She didn't just cheat. She went back. She blew up my life, our son's life, to rebuild her old one. Her own parents, who had adored me, were so disgusted they disowned her. They still call me on Tony's birthday. They don't speak to their own daughter. Now, 4 years later, points or just shitty luck came for Mark. Cancer. The bad kind. And suddenly, the guy who broke up my marriage needed his wife by his side 24/7. And I, the guy they betrayed, became the reliable backup plan. For the last few months, I've been playing the part of the bigger man. Of course I can take Tony, I'd say. Just let me know when. I did it for my son. Only for him. He didn't deserve to see his mom stressed, or his world in chaos. My world could handle it. I pulled onto her street. The lawn was overgrown, a plastic tricycle lying on its side like a casualty of war. I could hear the chaos before I even knocked. A baby screaming, the bass-heavy thud of some video game, and a high-pitched MOM that sounded more like an accusation than a request for help. The door flew open before my knuckles hit the wood. Sarah stood there looking like a ghost. Her hair was a mess. Dark circles pooled under her eyes, and her shirt had a fresh stain on it that looked suspiciously like baby spit up. Felix. Thank God, she breathed, her voice raw. Behind her, the scene was exactly what I'd heard from the driveway. Her two older kids from her marriage to Mark, a boy and a girl on the edge of their teens, were glued to the TV controllers in hand, completely oblivious. On the floor in a bouncy seat, one of the babies, the two new ones she'd had since getting back with Mark, was wailing its head off. The other was probably upstairs, adding to the symphony. "Hey," I said, my eyes scanning for my son. "Where's Tony?" "He's in his room." "Getting his bag," she said, wringing her hands. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Felix, you are a lifesaver. I mean it. I don't know what I'd do." "It's fine, Sarah." "He's my son. Where do you need to be?" "The hospital. Mark had a bad night. They want to run some more tests." She finally looked at me, and her eyes were brimming with a desperate, pleading exhaustion that almost times made me feel sorry for her. Just then, Tony barreled out of the hallway, a small Spider-Man backpack slung over his shoulder. "Dad." The knot in my gut loosened. I knelt down, and he crashed into me, all 6 years of him smelling like kid shampoo and graham crackers. "Hey, buddy, you ready for a guy's night?" "Yeah, can we get pizza?" "Is the sky blue?" I laughed, ruffling his hair. I stood up, holding his small hand in mine, ready to make our escape. "All right, Sarah. Keep me updated. I can keep him through the weekend if you need." "Wait," she said, her voice suddenly tight. I stopped my hand on the doorknob. She took a deep breath, like she was about to jump off a cliff. The screaming baby chose that exact moment to ramp up its volume, a piercing shriek that vibrated through the floor. The tweens didn't even flinch. I was wondering, she started, her gaze darting from me to the chaotic living room and back again. "You've been so good about all this. About taking Tony." "He's my son," I repeated, my tone a little flatter this time. I had a bad feeling about where this was going. A very bad feeling. I know. It's just, you're already here. Your car is right there." I just stared at her, waiting. The air grew thick. Tony squeezed my hand, sensing the shift. "The thing is," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush, "Mark's mom was supposed to come watch the others, but her car broke down, and my friends aren't answering, and I can't take all 4 of them to the hospital waiting room. It's just not possible. And I really asterisk, need to be there for him." She finally locked eyes with me, a terrifying mix of hope and shame swirling in their depths. So she whispered, her voice cracking, "Since you're already taking one, I was hoping you could just, She gestured vaguely at the chaos behind her, at the screaming baby, the zoned-out tweens at the upstairs where another baby was presumably waiting. "Take them all." The question hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A screaming baby, a silent TV, and her impossible request. For a second, I thought I misheard. My brain just couldn't process the sheer, unmitigated audacity. I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest, a raw, incredulous bark of a laugh that I had to choke back down. Tony squeezed my hand again, harder this time. Dad? I looked from Sarah's desperate face to the two tweens on the couch who hadn't even registered my presence, and then to the wailing infant in the bouncy seat. All of them. She wanted me to take all of them. No, I said. The word was flat. Cold. A stone dropping into a well. Sarah flinched as if I'd slapped her. What, Felix, please? It's just for a few hours. No, Sarah, I repeated, my voice harder this time. I'm here for Tony. He's my son. He is my responsibility. I gestured with my free hand toward the chaos behind her. They are not. But you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I cut her off the dam of the bigger man persona finally cracking. I understand that times he times is your husband. And those are times his times, children. This is the family you chose. You blew up our family for this one. Her face crumpled. Tears welled in her eyes, the ones that used to work on me every single time. That's not fair. He's sick, Felix. He could be dying. And that's a terrible situation, I said, and I meant it. I wouldn't wish cancer on my worst enemy, but the sympathy ended there. But his illness doesn't magically make his 4 other children my problem. I'm not the backup plan for the life you built after you cheated on me. The words were brutal. I could see them land. She recoiled, her mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. What about the child support I pay you? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. Tony is with me half the time now. More even. I know for a fact that money isn't all going to his expenses. Use that. Hire a babysitter. That's what it's for. I can't, she wailed, the desperation turning into a pathetic sob. Nobody will help me. My parents won't even take my calls. All my old friends, they sided with you. I have no one, Felix. You're it. You're all I have left. The statement was so profoundly twisted that it almost knocked the wind out of me. I was her last resort. The man whose heart she'd ripped out and stomped on was now the only person she could turn to. The irony was a bitter acid in my throat. I looked down at Tony, who was watching this exchange with wide, confused eyes. This was not for his ears. That's a problem you created, Sarah, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. I pulled Tony closer to my leg. You need to solve it. We're leaving. I turned the doorknob, pulling my son with me out into the cool evening air. I didn't look back. I buckled Tony into his car seat, the silence in the car a deafening contrast to the circus of misery in that house. As I pulled away from the curb, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Sarah was still standing in the doorway, a lone, pathetic figure swallowed by the shadows of the home she'd chosen over me. For a moment, a wave of something dark and satisfying washed over me. Revenge. It tasted like cold, clean air after 4 years of breathing smoke. But it didn't last. By the time we were on the freeway, the guilt had started to creep in. It began as a dull ache behind my ribs and spread thick and heavy like tar. Tony was chattering away in the back, oblivious. Can we get pepperoni, Times, and Time sausage, Dad? You got it, buddy, I said, my voice sounding hollow to my own ears. I had just left a woman the mother of my child in an impossible situation. Her husband has cancer. She's overwhelmed alone and breaking down. And I, the one person who could have helped, had looked her in the eye and said, not my problem. What kind of a person does that? A crap person, that's who. A petty, bitter man holding a 4-year-old grudge so tight he'd let it strangle his own decency. The children are innocent in all of this. The tweens, the babies. They didn't ask for any of it. I could have just taken them. It would have been a chaotic night, sure, but I could have handled it. I could have been the bigger man for real this time. But I wasn't. I was the man who said no. We got the pizza, went home, and put on a superhero movie. I wrestled with Tony on the rug, built a Lego tower, and read him 2 bedtime stories. I did all the normal happy dad things, but my mind was a million miles away, stuck in that cluttered doorway. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. The raw, pleading desperation. The utter defeat when I said no. After Tony was asleep, I sank onto the couch, the silence of my own house pressing in on me. My house was clean. It was quiet. It was peaceful. It was everything her house wasn't. And I felt disgusting for it. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over her name. Should I call her back? Tell her I'd made a mistake, that I'd come get the kids? Then the other thought, the cold and calculating one, slithered back in. I thought about the sheer mind-bending audacity of her request when you stripped it down to its core. Asterisk. The guy I cheated on you with is dying. Will you please raise his children for the night? Asterisk. And what happens next? What happens when Mark doesn't get better? He's got the bad kind of cancer, she said, the kind people don't walk away from. If I say yes tonight, what happens in a month? Or a year? Do I become the default dad? The go-to solution every time things get hard? Do I end up raising the 5 children of the man who destroyed my life? Just because I was too guilty to say no the first time. The thought sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't about one night. This was about the rest of my life. I was drawing a line, not just in the sand, but in concrete. I needed a reality check. I needed to know if I was a monster or if I was just a man trying to protect himself. I opened my browser and typed in the address for a website I'd only ever read for entertainment. I clicked Create Post. My fingers flew across the screen, the whole sordid story pouring out of me. The cheating, the divorce, her family disowning her, the cancer tonight's request. I typed it all, every last humiliating detail. I stared at the title for a long time, trying to phrase it right. Finally, I typed times, am I the bad guy for refusing to babysit my ex-wife's 4 other kids after she left me for their father? Asterisk. I hit post and watched it go live. Then I leaned back, my heart pounding in my chest, and waited for the internet to tell me what kind of man I really was. My sister Sarah and I used to be an unbreakable team. When she was 19 and terrified, I was the first person she told she was bisexual. I held her while she cried, scared of how her parents would react. I was the one who sat with her when she told them ready to fight her corner. They were great, of course, but it was me she needed that day. For a decade, I was her person. Then she met Gary. The first red flag was our wedding invitation. Sarah and Gary invite you to celebrate their marriage. You. Singular. My boyfriend of 3 years, Mark, wasn't just a casual +1. He was practically family. I called her thinking it was a simple oversight. Oh, she'd said, her voice tight. Gary's family is traditional. It's just easier this way. To keep the peace. Easier for who, Sarah? I asked. Please don't make this a thing, Jack. I didn't. I went alone, watched her marry a man with a stiff smile and a weak handshake, and felt a crack form in the foundation of us. After that, the rules became unspoken but clear. Mark and I were welcome at her new house, but only for brunch on a Saturday or an early dinner on a Tuesday. Never on a Friday night. Never on a weekend when Gary was guaranteed to be home. She'd invent excuses. Gary had a guy's night, he was working late, he wasn't feeling well. We all knew the truth. My relationship was something to be hidden, an inconvenience to her new life. So when she called me last Wednesday, her voice radiating forced cheerfulness, I was already on guard. Hey, little bro, what are you up to this weekend? Not much. Mark and I were thinking of hitting that new brewery downtown. Oh, great, she said, steamrolling right over the mention of his name. Listen, I have a massive favor to ask. Gary and I have this conference we completely forgot about, and our sitter just canceled. Could you possibly watch Diana for us Friday night to Sunday afternoon? Diana was Gary's 6-year-old daughter from his first marriage. A sweet, quiet kid with big, curious eyes. I loved her, but the request felt transactional. A deployment of the brother she kept on a shelf, dusted off only when needed. I don't know, Sarah. Please, Jack, you'd be saving my life. Literally. My boss will kill me if I miss this. And Di loves you. The part of me that still remembered the Unbreakable team won out. Fine. Yeah, okay. I'll do it. Friday evening, Sarah dropped Diana off, giving me a quick, tense hug at the door before practically sprinting back to her car. Mark was making grilled cheese and tomato soup, Diana's favorite. He had her giggling in minutes, balancing a spoon on his nose. For a few hours, everything felt normal. It felt like family. Saturday morning, Mark had to head into the office for a few hours. He came to the door of the living room where I was watching cartoons with Diana. All right, I'm heading out, he said. Be back around 2. He leaned down and gave me a quick, simple kiss. The kind of absent-minded, affectionate gesture we'd shared 1,000 times. Bye, love you. Love you too, I said. He waved at Diana. Bye, Di. Be good for your uncle. Bye, Mark, she chirped, her eyes glued to the TV. The moment passed. An hour later, during a commercial break, Diana turned to me, her head cocked. Uncle Jack. Yeah, sweetie. Why did your friend Mark kiss you? My stomach did a nervous little flip. The classic dreaded moment. The Times question asterisk. A dozen scenarios flashed through my mind, most of them ending in a mushroom cloud originating from Gary's head. But then I looked at her face. There was no judgment, no confusion. Just simple 6-year-old curiosity. She wasn't asking for a political statement, she was just asking a question. I took a breath. Well, sometimes a boy likes a boy the same way a man and a woman like each other. Like how your daddy likes Sarah. She processed that for a second, her brow furrowed. Then she nodded, a slow, solemn bob of her head. Okay. And that was it. She turned back to the TV, suddenly fascinated by a yogurt commercial. The conversation was over. The bomb had not gone off. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. It was fine. Everything was fine. On Sunday, just after lunch, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Gary. Asterisk, asterisk. What the fuck did you say to my daughter? Asterisk, asterisk. My blood ran cold. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Before I could even formulate a reply, my phone started ringing. Asterisk, Gary, asterisk. I answered, my heart pounding against my ribs. Hello. Don't you hello me, you sick bastard, he screamed, his voice distorted with rage. What the hell did you do? Diana just asked me if men can marry men. What kind of filth are you pushing on my kid? Gary, calm down, I said, my voice shaking. She asked a simple question. I gave her a simple age-appropriate answer. Age-appropriate, AGE appropriate. You don't get to decide what's appropriate for my daughter. You deliberately corrupted her. You pushed your sick lifestyle on her. It's not a lifestyle, it's who I am. I shot back my own anger, flaring. She saw Mark kiss me goodbye. What was I supposed to do? Lie to her? Yes. You should have said he was your cousin or your weird friend. I don't give a shit. Anything but the truth. There was a muffled sound, and then Sarah's voice was on the line. It was colder than Gary's. Jack, what were you thinking? She hissed. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Sarah, you can't be serious. She asked a question. You should have just changed the subject. You know how Gary is about this. You deliberately provoked him. I provoked him by existing in my own home, by getting a goodbye kiss from my partner. My God, Sarah, listen to yourself. This isn't about you, Jack. This is about Diana, she shrieked. Gary is freaking out. He's talking about taking her to a psychologist to see what kind of damage you've done. I just laughed. A hollow, broken sound. Damage. You think I times her by telling her that gay people exist. You of all people. You made a mistake, Jack, she said, her voice flat and final. And now we have to clean it up. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen staring at my phone, my whole body trembling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. My sister. The one I'd protected. The one I'd stood up for. She'd just thrown me under the bus to appease her bigoted husband. An hour later, an email notification pinged. The subject line was **** invoice for psychological assessment. ***. It was from Gary. The body of the email was short, brutal, and utterly insane. He had already booked an appointment with a child therapist for the following week to assess the emotional and psychological damage caused by your inappropriate disclosure. He accused me of grooming and demanded I pay the full cost of the therapy sessions, attaching a fee schedule from the clinic. The last sentence made the air leave my lungs. Asterisk. If you refuse to take financial responsibility for the harm you've caused, our lawyer will be in touch. Asterisk. I couldn't breathe. A lawsuit. He was threatening me with a lawsuit. For answering a child's question honestly. Stunned, my hands shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone, I called the only person I could think of. Dad, I choked out, my voice cracking. Jack, what's wrong? You sound terrible. I'm forwarding you an email, I stammered. From Gary. You need to see it. He's threatening to sue me. My dad, a lawyer for 35 years, was silent as I explained everything. The kiss, Diana's question, the phone call, the accusations. I could practically feel his fury radiating through the phone. He said what my dad finally said, his voice dangerously low. He's claiming you damaged Diana. Send me that email, right now. I forwarded it. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a full minute. I could hear the faint sound of my mom in the background asking what was going on. Then my dad came back on the line and his voice was like ice and iron. Linda, get your coat. We're going to Sarah's. He spoke back into the phone, his tone leaving no room for argument. Jack. Stay where you are. Don't call her. Don't answer if they call you. Your mother and I are on our way into the city. We're handling this. The call ended. I just stood there, phone in hand, the silence of my apartment roaring in my ears. I felt like I'd been in a car crash. Everything was distant, hazy, and my body was thrumming with an adrenaline I didn't know what to do with. Mark found me like that an hour later when he got home from work, just staring at the kitchen wall. He took one look at my face, dropped his bag, and had his arms around me. Jack, what happened? I couldn't form words. I just held him, burying my face in his shoulder, and finally let out the shuddering breath I'd been holding since Gary's text. I told him everything. Every vile word, every accusation, the email, the threat of a lawsuit. He listened, his expression hardening from concern to a quiet, controlled fury. That son of a bitch, he said, his voice low. And Sarah just let him. I just nodded, the shame and hurt of it fresh all over again. My phone rang, startling us both. It was my dad. I put it on speaker, my hand trembling so badly Mark had to steady it for me. Jack Dad's voice was tense. We're here, at Sarah's. I'm putting you on speaker. Your mother thinks you have a right to hear this. Don't say a word unless I ask you to understand. Okay, I whispered. The soundscape of the call changed. I could hear muffled voices, a door closing. Sarah, my dad said, his voice devoid of warmth. Where's your husband? Dad, what are you doing here? This is not a good time. Sarah's voice was strained, panicked. It's about to get a hell of a lot worse. Get Gary. There was a shuffle of feet, and then Gary's smug voice filled the speaker. Well, look what the cat dragged in. Come to apologize on behalf of your deviant son. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I heard my mom gasp. "You will address my son as Jack," my dad said, his voice like granite. "I reviewed your email. Let me be clear. There will be no psychological assessment. There will be no invoice, and there will certainly be no lawsuit. If you so much as type my son's name in an email again, I will personally see to it that my firm buries you in so much litigation you'll be paying off the debt in your next life. Are we clear?" "You can't threaten me in my own home," Gary sputtered. "That wasn't a threat," Dad replied coldly. "That was the itinerary for your future. Now we're going to talk about the accusation you made. You believe Jack damaged your daughter. He exposed her to his lifestyle. He confused her. He's a groomer." The word hung in the air, ugly and venomous. Mark's hand tightened on my shoulder. My son answered a 6-year-old's question with a simple, honest sentence. My dad's voice was rising now, the lawyerly calm cracking to reveal the enraged father beneath. He told her, "Love is love. The only person who seems damaged by that concept is you, Gary. The only person pushing filth and corruption here is the man who would teach a child that some people's families are wrong, that her uncle is something to be ashamed of. I won't have her growing up thinking that's normal," Gary yelled. Thinking what's normal? That her uncle is happy, that he's in a loving relationship. Dad's voice was a roar now. "You know, I worried when Sarah married you. I saw the way you looked at Jack and Mark. I saw the polite bigotry you tried to hide. But I kept my mouth shut for my daughter's sake." He paused, and the silence was heavy, dangerous. "But this accusing my son of being a predator for existing, threatening him after he did you a favor? No. We're done." "Dad, please," Sarah begged. "Let's all just calm down." "I am perfectly calm, Sarah," my father said. Gary, smelling what he thought was a victory, pushed his luck. He let out a condescending scoff. "Look, I'm sorry you didn't raise him right, but don't worry. I won't make the same mistakes with Diana that you made with him." The line went dead quiet. It was the quiet of a fuse burning down to the dynamite. For a full 5 seconds, no one spoke. I felt the blood drain from my face. When my dad's voice came back, it was a whisper of pure ice. "Get out of my daughter's house." What? Gary laughed. "This is my time's house." "Not while I'm in it," my father snapped. "You are no longer a part of this family. You are not welcome at our home for holidays. You will not speak to me or my wife or my son ever again. You are a stranger to us. Now get out of my sight before I do something I don't regret." Sarah, Gary shrieked his voice, pitching high with panic and disbelief. "Are you going to let him talk to me like this?" And this was it. The moment. The choice she had to make. My sister. My unbreakable team. I held my breath. "Jack," she screamed, and her voice was suddenly directed at the phone at me. It was raw, hysterical, and full of a hatred I had never heard before. "Are you happy now? Are you happy you've done this? You and your fucking mistake are destroying my marriage. You're ruining my life." The phone clicked. The line went dead. I dropped my phone onto the counter. The sound it made was small and pathetic. Ruining her life. My mistake. My existence was a mistake that was inconveniencing her marriage to a monster. I sank onto a kitchen stool, the strength gone from my legs. Mark knelt in front of me, his hands on my knees. "Jack. Breathe. Hey, look at me. Breathe." I didn't know how long we stayed like that. 10 minutes? An hour? Then there was a soft knock at our apartment door. Mark opened it to reveal my parents. My mom's eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. My dad just looked old. The fury had drained out of him, leaving a deep, hollowed-out sadness. Mom came straight to me, wrapping her arms around me so tightly it hurt. She didn't say anything. She just held me, stroking my hair like she did when I was a kid. Dad stood in the doorway, his hands shoved in his pockets. She chose him, he said, his voice rough. I told her, he goes or we go. She told us to leave. He finally looked at me, his eyes filled with a grief that mirrored my own. I'm sorry, son. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, I managed to choke out. We raised her to be kind, my mom whispered, her voice thick with tears. To be brave. I don't know who that woman is. We stood there for a long time, a new smaller family unit forged in the wreckage. My phone buzzed on the counter. We all looked at it. A text from Sarah. Asterisk, asterisk, I hope you're satisfied. Gary's gone to his brother's. You've broken our family. Don't ever contact me again. Asterisk, asterisk. I didn't feel rage anymore. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt empty. The unbreakable team was broken. The person I'd protected had fed me to the wolves to save herself. My father's actions, his righteous fury, hadn't been revenge. It had been a clarification. He hadn't banished Gary. He'd just revealed the walls that were already there, forcing Sarah to finally show us which side she was on. She'd made her choice. And now I had to live with it. It all started when Chloe lost her job in July. 9 years we'd been together, engaged for 2. We had a rhythm, a life built brick by brick. Then the marketing firm downsized, and suddenly her rhythm was gone. She started going out more, reconnecting with friends, she said. I didn't think much of it. She was hurting. She needed a distraction. The first crack appeared in August. A weird text on her phone, a name I didn't recognize. When I asked her, face went pale. It's nothing, she said, snatching the phone back. Just an old colleague. But her hands were shaking. That night, she broke down crying. I have to tell you something, she sobbed into my chest. I kissed someone. My world tilted. Kiss someone, just a kiss. A stupid, drunken mistake at a bar, she swore. She was lost, feeling worthless after the layoff, and this guy gave her attention. It hurt like hell, but 9 years is a long time. People make mistakes. We could fix this. Is that it? I asked, my voice tight. Just a kiss. Yes, she whispered, her eyes wide and pleading. I swear. It meant nothing. I love you. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. A week later, the story changed. It wasn't just a kiss. They'd gone on a date. Maybe 2. I was just so lonely, she explained, twisting the ring I gave her around her finger. We just talked. That's all. Another week, another piece of the puzzle. They had slept together. Once. Just once, she insisted, tears streaming down her face again. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I stopped it right after. It's over, Silas. I promise you it's over. That was our first D-Day in early September. A full confession, I thought. The rock bottom from which we could rebuild. We talked for hours. I yelled, I cried, I asked a million questions. She answered them all with what seemed like brutal honesty. He was a mistake. A symptom of her depression. She chose me. She chose us. We agreed to marriage counseling. We agreed to a clean slate. For a few weeks, things felt almost normal. She was more attentive, more affectionate. She was trying. I was trying. Then she announced a trip. A solo trip to clear her head. She was going to visit an old college friend in Portugal for a week. I need this, sighed she said, her hands on my cheeks. To find myself again. To be the woman you deserve when I come back. I was hesitant, but I agreed. It felt like a test of trust. A grand gesture to prove I was all in on fixing us. She sent me pictures from Lisbon, cobblestone streets, beautiful sunsets, smiling selfies of just her. Missing you like crazy, the text read. Can't wait to come home to you. But when she got back, something was still off. A distance I couldn't bridge. She was secretive with her phone jumping if I walked into the room while she was texting. She started staying late at the library working on her resume, she said. I felt a familiar knot tightening in my gut, but I pushed it down. I was being paranoid. We were healing. The breaking point didn't come from a text message or a suspicious phone call. It came from our shared laptop. I was looking for an old tax return, digging through the folders on the desktop. My mouse hovered over a folder named Summer Fun. I figured it was photos from our trip to the lake in June. I clicked. It wasn't our lake trip. The first things I saw were PDF files, Airbnb receipts. One for a cozy apartment in Lisbon, Portugal. Booked for 2 adults. Another for a weekend getaway upstate. From 2 weeks ago. The dates lined up perfectly with her solo trip and a weekend she'd supposedly spent with her sister. My heart started hammering against my ribs. My breath caught in my throat. I clicked on another folder inside this one labeled Pics. There she was. My Chloe. Her arm was slung around another man's shoulder, a stupid grin on his face. They were standing in front of a landmark I recognized from the photos she'd sent me from Portugal. Another picture showed them at a candlelit dinner clinking wine glasses. He was the guy from the text message. The one-time mistake. I kept clicking, my hand trembling. Each photo was a fresh stab to the gut. There they were, hiking upstate, the autumn leaves a brilliant orange behind them. And then I saw it. The one that shattered everything. A selfie dated last Saturday. The day she was supposedly at the library all night. They were in a car, her head on his shoulder, and he was kissing her cheek. She was smiling. A genuine, unguarded, happy smile. The kind she hadn't given me in months. The sadness I'd been drowning in for months vanished. It didn't just fade, it was burned away by a sudden white-hot rage. The trickle of truth wasn't a confession. It was a strategy. A way to manage my reaction to keep me on the hook while she lived a completely separate life. All the tears, the promises, the I choose you speeches, it was all a performance. I stood up from the computer, my body feeling strangely calm, detached. The 9 years we'd built together crumbled into dust in that single moment. There was nothing left to save. There was nothing left to fix. I walked over to the window and stared out at the city lights, the life we were supposed to share. For the first time in months, I wasn't confused or heartbroken. I was just done. I pulled out my phone. My thumb moved with a purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. First, I called my brother. Then my parents. I told them everything. The whole ugly, unvarnished truth. They were shocked, furious, supportive. It was the easiest conversation I'd ever had. After I hung up, I opened a new text message. Her name, Chloe, stared back at me from the screen. I deleted the heart. Then I started to type. I found the folder, Chloe. Come get your things. We're done. I hit send. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. The words looked cold and alien on the screen, but they felt like the first honest thing I'd said in months. Her reply was almost instant. A series of question marks. Then, what folder? See, what's going on? Call me. I ignored it. I walked into our bedroom Times, my Times bedroom, and pulled 2 empty suitcases from the top of the closet. I opened them on the bed and began methodically taking her clothes from the hangers, folding them neatly and placing them inside. The scent of her perfume, a scent that used to feel like home, now smelled like a stranger's. An hour later, I heard her key in the lock. The door opened, and she stepped inside her face, a mask of worried confusion. "Silas, what the hell was that text I've been calling you?" I didn't look up from packing her drawer of sweaters. "It's exactly what it sounds like," I said, my voice flat. The folder on the laptop. "Summer fun. Portugal. Last weekend. All of it." "I know." Her face went from confused to ghostly white. The performance began immediately. Her eyes welled up, her lower lip trembled. "Oh, baby, no. It's not what you think. Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I said, zipping the first suitcase shut and placing it by the bedroom door. "You've been explaining for months. It was all bullshit." "It wasn't bullshit," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I love you. He was a mistake. I was weak." "You flew across the ocean with your mistake." I cut her off, my voice rising for the first time. "You spent last weekend with him while telling me you were at the library." The lies, Chloe. The sheer number of them. It's sociopathic. She started to sob the full-body, gut-wrenching sobs I had fallen for every single time before. But now, it was like watching a movie with the sound off. I felt nothing. "My mom and dad are on their way over," I said calmly, starting on the second suitcase. "My brother too. They're going to help me move your stuff into a storage unit." That's what broke her. The tears stopped instantly. Her head snapped up, her eyes narrowing into slits of pure fury. "You told your times, family times," she spat the word family, dripping with venom. They deserved to know why the wedding was off. "You had no right," she screamed, her face contorting. "That was our private business. You did that just to humiliate me." She stormed past me, grabbing a handful of my shirts from the closet. She marched to the front door, wrenched it open, and threw them out into the hallway. "You want to see humiliating?" she yelled, grabbing another armful. "T-shirts, a jacket, a pair of jeans I loved." All of it went flying. "This is your time's fault. You know that. 9 years and you couldn't even be bothered to fuck me right anymore. You were boring, you were never spontaneous, never exciting. Of course I looked for it somewhere else." I just stood there watching her. It was incredible. Not a single apology. Not a shred of remorse. Just pure uncut rage that I had discovered her game and ruined her fun. "You were so wrapped up in your stupid job you barely even noticed I was gone," she continued, her voice ragged. "You pushed me away, Silas. You pushed me right to him." She grabbed the framed photo of us from the nightstand, the one from our engagement party. For a second, I thought she was going to smash it. Instead, she stared at it, her face twisting again, this time into something that looked like pain. She threw it into one of her suitcases and slammed the lid shut. "Fine," she hissed, grabbing her bags. "I'll go. But you'll regret this. You'll be miserable without me." She dragged the suitcases out the door, leaving my clothes strewn across the hallway floor. The door slammed shut behind her and the apartment fell into a deafening silence. I stood there for a long moment, then slowly walked out and began picking up my shirts. I wasn't miserable. I was free. The first few weeks were a barrage. Late-night texts filled with a cocktail of apologies and accusations. Asterisk 117 a.m. I can't sleep. The bed feels so empty. Asterisk. Asterisk 122 a.m. You didn't even fight for us. 9 years and you just threw it away. Asterisk. Asterisk 205 a.m. Please, Silas. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut him off forever. I'll tell you everything. Asterisk. But she never did. When I broke my no contact rule once, foolishly demanding the unvarnished truth as a condition for even speaking to her, she gave me the same old story. It was just a few times. It meant nothing. The lies were so ingrained, she couldn't even tell the truth when there was nothing left to lose. I blocked her number. I started therapy. My therapist called it reclaiming the narrative. I wasn't the boring, inadequate man she painted me as in her final desperate attack. I was a man who had been systematically deceived by a person he trusted with his entire world. Slowly, life started to come back in color. I reconnected with friends. I went to the gym. I even went on a few dates. They were awkward and strange, but they were also a reminder that there was a world outside the wreckage Chloe had left behind. About 4 months later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello. C. It was her. Her voice was thick, with tears broken. I didn't know who else to call. I waited, saying nothing. The silence on the line was heavy. I lost my new job, she finally choked out. They had another round of layoffs. It's just like before. I don't know what to do. And there it was. The full circle moment. The same catalyst that started her affair happening all over again. A year ago, this call would have sent me rushing to her side, ready to comfort and fix and save. I braced myself for the expected wave of pity or anger or some lingering echo of love. But nothing came. I felt a profound, unnerving, and deeply peaceful indifference. The person on the other end of the line was a stranger telling me a sad story that had nothing to do with me. The emotional charge was gone. The wires had been cut. I'm sorry to hear that, Chloe, I said, and my voice was even calm. I hope things work out for you. She started to say my name again, her voice pleading, but I didn't let her finish. Goodbye. I ended the call and blocked the number. I looked out my window at the same city lights I'd stared at the night I found the folder. Back then they felt like a monument to a life I had lost. Now they just looked like a city full of possibilities. And for the first time in a very long time, I was excited to see what came next. I was 10 when my mom married Lee. At the reception, my new 8-year-old brother Sam got to make a toast with a tiny glass of sparkling cider. Everyone oohed and awed as he slurred his way through a speech about gaining a new daddy. I spent the whole night in a corner nursing a Shirley Temple Invisible. Lee was the one who found me. He crouched down his tux, smelling like fancy soap and champagne. Not a party girl, huh? I shook my head. Me neither, he said with a wink. They're all a bit much, aren't they? That was Lee. In a family where I was an afterthought, he was the one who saw me. My mother, once she'd secured Lee's wealth, poured all her attention into Sam. He was her golden boy, the true heir to the life she'd always wanted. She'd coo over his report cards even when my grades were better. She'd brag about his Pee Wee football trophies while I was winning statewide art competitions she never bothered to attend. Sam was the sun, and Mom and I were just two sad little planets caught in his orbit. Lee's relatives weren't much better. His sister Carol always pinched Sam's cheeks and slipped him a $20 bill, her eyes sliding right over me. To them, I was just the baggage that came with their brother's new wife. But Lee was my person. He was the one who taught me how to invest using a stock market simulator. He was the one who read my college application essays and told me they were brilliant. When I got accepted to a university in London for graphic design, my mother's only comment was, "Isn't that a bit extravagant?" Lee overheard her. He walked into my room later that night and handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check that covered my first year's tuition and housing. "Don't you ever let them make you feel small, Mila," he said, his voice firm. "You're my girl. Go take on the world." And I did. For 4 years, London was my escape. Lee and I had weekly video calls. He'd ask about my projects, my friends, my life. He sent care packages filled with American snacks and ridiculous souvenirs from his business trips. My contact with Mom and Sam dwindled to stilted holiday calls and the occasional guilt-tripping text from her. "Your brother misses you," one read, even though I knew Sam hadn't asked about me once. I was finishing up my final portfolio a week from graduation when my phone rang. It was Mom. My heart instantly seized up. She never called. Mila. "You need to come home," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "It's Lee. He's gone." I didn't hear the rest. "It was a heart attack," she said. Sudden, no warning. The world tilted on its axis, the colors of my apartment dimming to a dull, muted gray. The flight back was a 20-hour blur of recycled air and stale pretzels. I walked into the house I grew up in, and it felt like a stranger's home. It was eerily quiet. Mom and Sam were in the living room, dressed in black, looking more inconvenienced than grief-stricken. Lee's sister Carol was there too, perched on an armchair, her eyes red but sharp, watching everyone. Mila Mom said her tone the same as it was on the phone. It wasn't a greeting. It was an acknowledgement of a task completed. Sam just grunted from the couch, scrolling on his phone. He hadn't even looked up. The funeral was suffocating. I listened to people give hollow speeches about a man they barely knew. I stood there, a ghost in a black dress, while my mother accepted condolences with a practiced, somber grace. The only real thing in that whole miserable day was the tight anchoring grip of Lee's hand that I could no longer feel in mine. A week later, we were all summoned to the lawyer's office for the will reading. The room was tense, all dark wood and the smell of old paper. Me, Mom, Sam, and Aunt Carol sat on one side of a ridiculously large mahogany desk. The lawyer, a kind-faced man named Mr. Abernathy, cleared his throat and put on his glasses. He went through the smaller bequests, first donations to charities, a few items for friends. My stomach was in knots. I expected a token amount, something to help me get started after graduation, a safety net. To my wife Helen, Mr. Abernathy read, "I leave the sum of $250,000 and the ownership of our primary residence free and clear." My mom's face tightened. I could see the furious calculation behind her eyes. It was a lot of money, but for a man of Lee's wealth, it was a pittance. To Samuel Vance, the lawyer, continued, not looking up, "I also leave the sum of $250,000 to be placed in a trust until his 30th birthday." Sam scoffed. "A trust? I'm 22. Mr. Abernathy ignored him. He took a deep breath, and his eyes found mine. "And to my stepdaughter Mila, who I've always considered my own, I bequeath the remainder of my entire estate, including all properties, stocks, and liquid assets valued at approximately $7 million. The silence that followed was thick and violent. I couldn't breathe. $7 million. The number didn't even sound real. My gaze flickered to my mother. Her carefully constructed mask of grief had shattered, replaced by a pale, quivering fury. Sam's jaw was on the floor, his eyes wide with disbelief. "That's impossible," my mother whispered, her voice a low hiss. "There's been a mistake." "There is no mistake, Helen," Mr. Abernathy said softly. He picked up another sheet of paper. Lee also included a codicil, which he insisted I read aloud. "It was added 6 months ago." He cleared his throat again. The air crackled. "This codicil," he read, "is based on the results of a DNA test I privately conducted. The results confirm that Mr. Samuel Vance is not my biological son." The world stopped. Every sound in the room vanished. I stared at my mother, whose face had drained of all color. She looked like a cornered animal. Sam shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floorboards. "That's a lie," he shouted, pointing a trembling finger at the lawyer. "He's lying. Mom, tell him he's lying." But she couldn't speak. She just sat there, frozen as decades of secrets unraveled around her. Aunt Carol let out a small, sharp gasp, her eyes burning holes into my mother's head. and me. All I could feel was a profound aching sadness for Lee. The man who had been my rock had been living with this crushing betrayal all alone. The ride home was a silent war. Back at the house, the fragile truth shattered. My mother and Sam cornered me in the living room, their faces twisted with a righteous rage that made my skin crawl. The shock had burned off, leaving behind pure, ugly entitlement. "This is a sick joke," my mother started, her voice dangerously low. "A sick, vengeful joke from a dying man." "It's what he wanted," I said, my own voice barely a whisper. "He was sick. You obviously manipulated him," Sam snarled, stepping forward. He looked like a stranger, his features warped by greed. "That money belongs to this family." "He was times my family," I shot back, a spark of anger finally cutting through my grief. The only one who ever acted like it. My mother's eyes narrowed into slits. "You listen to me, Mila. You will give us our share. Half. 25% for me, 25% for your brother? It is the only right and decent thing to do after everything we've done for you." I stared at her at the sheer audacity of it. The years of neglect, of being made to feel like a burden, flashed before my eyes. I thought of Lee, of his unwavering kindness, of the freedom he had so deliberately given me. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it landed in the room like a stone. Sam took another step closer, his fists clenched. "Oh, you'll do it," he seethed, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. "Or we'll see you in court. We'll drag your name and his through so much mud you'll drown in it." The threat hung in the air, thick and rancid. I looked at Sam, at the stranger wearing my brother's face, and felt nothing but a cold, hard certainty. The fear I thought would paralyze me simply wasn't there. "Go ahead," I said, my voice steady. "Sue me. Let's get a court to hear how Mom cheated on the man who gave you everything you've ever had. Let's publicize the DNA test. I'm sure Lee's business partners would love to hear all about it." My mother flinched as if I'd slapped her. Sam's face went from red to a mottled purple. "You wouldn't," he spat. "You've misjudged me my entire life," I said, looking from his furious face to my mother's pale one. "Both of you. You thought I was weak because I was quiet. You thought I was a pushover because I didn't fight for your attention. You were wrong." I took a breath, the lawyer's office, Lee's quiet, strength, all of it solidifying into a plan. "I will not give you the principal, not a dollar of it. That was Lee's gift to me. But I'll make you an offer, and it's the only one you're going to get." They stared their greed momentarily, overriding their rage. "I will invest the entire inheritance," I explained the words, feeling like Lee himself was speaking through me. Aggressively, but smartly. The way he taught me. "I will take 50% of the annual gains for myself. You two can split the other 50%. You'll have a significant income for the rest of your lives, but you will never touch the core amount. It remains mine as Lee intended." Sam let out a bark of a laugh. "You want us to live on your table scraps? On times, interest times? That money is ours." "It's not," I said flatly. "We want our half now, Mila," my mother shrieked, her voice cracking. $2 million each. We're not begging you for an allowance." "Then you get nothing," I said. "That's enough." The voice cut through the room like shattered glass. We all turned. Aunt Carol was on her feet, her expression one of utter disgust. She had been a silent observer, a piece of furniture, but now she was a coiled viper. Her eyes were fixed on my mother. "Helen, you will shut your mouth," she said, her voice low and venomous. "You will sit down and you will be silent. Do you have any idea the humiliation you have brought upon this family, upon my brother's memory?" My mother opened her mouth to protest, but Carol took a step forward. "Don't. Don't you say one more word. You lived in his house, you spent his money, all while carrying on with God knows who and passing off another man's child as his. The fact that he didn't throw you out on the street with nothing but the clothes on your back is a testament to his kindness, a kindness you clearly don't deserve." She turned her fiery gaze on Sam. And you are a product of her deception. Lee gave you a name, a home, a life of privilege you had no right to. And this is how you repay him, by trying to steal from the one person he truly loved as his own. Sam shrank back, all his bluster gone, looking for the first time like the child he was. Carol's eyes finally met mine, and for the first time in my life, I saw a glimmer of respect, of kinship. Mila's offer is more than generous. It's a gift. You will accept it. Because if you pursue this in court, if you breathe one word of this to anyone, I will personally see to it that the entire family fortune is leveraged against you. We will countersue for fraud. We will make sure every friend you have, every person you know, is aware of exactly what you are. You will be ruined. Is that clear? My mother collapsed onto the sofa, a choked sob escaping her lips. Sam just stood there dumbfounded. The showdown was over. I hadn't even needed to win it. Lee's real family had. The next day, I was back in Mr. Abernathy's office. I told him everything, the demands, the threats, my offer, and Carol's intervention. He listened, patiently nodding. Carol called me this morning, he said when I finished. She told me the family would stand behind whatever decision you made. They want to honor Lee's wishes. I don't want to give them what they demanded, I said. But I don't want them to be destitute. Lee, he wouldn't have wanted that regardless of everything. There are better ways, Mr. Abernathy said, a small, knowing smile on his face. Ways that protect you and Lee's gift. He laid out the plan. It was simple, elegant, and ironclad. I wasn't just investing the money. I was creating an irrevocable trust. My mother and Sam would be the beneficiaries. I would be the trustee. The trust would be funded with $2 million from the estate. The capital would be invested, and the dividends, and only the dividends, would be paid out to them in monthly installments. They could never access the principal. They couldn't borrow against it. They couldn't sell their interest. They would receive a steady, comfortable income for the rest of their lives, enough to maintain their lifestyle. But they would never hold the wealth. They would be provided for, but they would never be in control. It was the perfect solution. It was a golden cage. A final posthumous lesson from Lee on the difference between being rich and being wealthy. I had Mr. Abernathy draw up the papers. He sent a copy to my mother's new lawyer, along with a polite but firm letter stating this was my final non-negotiable decision. They could accept the terms of the trust, or they could receive nothing at all, and we would see them in court with the full backing of the rest of Lee's family. They folded within 24 hours. I saw them one last time before I flew back to London. I went to the house to pack up my childhood bedroom and collect a few of Lee's things. A framed photo of us at my high school graduation. His favorite worn-in leather armchair for my new apartment, a box of his old finance. Books. Mom was in the kitchen staring out the window. She looked older, smaller. The papers are signed, she said, not looking at me. I know. You'll be comfortable, I added. You won't have to worry about money. She finally turned her eyes hollow. It was never about the money, Mila. It was about respect. He disrespected me. I almost laughed. The cognitive dissonance was breathtaking. He gave you a life you could only dream of, and you repaid him with betrayal. The only disrespect I see is yours. I left her standing there and went to find Sam. He was in his room, surrounded by video games and expensive clothes. He didn't look up when I came in. Enjoy the allowance, I said. He just grunted. That was it. No tearful goodbyes. No final dramatic confrontation. Just the quiet, pathetic fizzle of a family that had been broken for years. On the plane back to London, I watched the American coastline disappear beneath the clouds. I held a check in my bag for an amount that still didn't feel real, but the weight I felt lifting off my shoulders was far more valuable. I was sad for the family I never had, and I was heartbroken for Lee's lonely burden. But for the first time, I felt completely, utterly free. Lee hadn't just left me his money. He had left me his legacy, a life of my own, making far away from the small people who had tried to keep me in the shadows. He told me to go take on the world. And now I finally could.